course, you couldn't know that I haven't changed. I still love you so.
I'd like to bring the meeting to order of the Wilmington City Council. I'd like to welcome all those who are with us here this evening and all those who are watching us at home on TV or on your computer. Thank you for taking an interest in your government. At this time, I'd like to introduce Joshua Lee, who's the Wilmington Police Department chaplain, for the invocation, and ask that everyone remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance after the invocation. Joshua, welcome.
Let's pray. Father, we just thank you, Lord, tonight for the opportunity to gather together. And Lord, we thank you for this beautiful weather you've given us today, Lord. And God, we pray tonight that as this meeting is ensuing, Father, our God, that all those who are here to present their concerns and their questions, that Lord, they would do so, and Father, that they would be heard, and Lord, that their opinions would be held in high regards. Father, we pray that as we are here tonight, Lord, that we would be respectful of one another, Lord, that what we do would honor you and bring glory to your name. We thank you again for all the things that you blessed us with, not only in our personal lives, but here in this city. And it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have several presentations this evening. Our first presentation is a recognition of Chancellor Sartorelli's retirement, and I would like to ask the Wilmington City Council to join me up front, and if Chancellor Sartorelli and his lovely wife Kathy could join us up at the front, that would be great. I know this is a bittersweet moment for you. You're leaving a great city, and you've done an outstanding job, and we're going to miss you, but I know you'll be back, and if not, we can all go down there and hang out with you in Naples. Okay, thank you. This is recognition is whereas Chancellor Sartorelli was responsible for the largest sustained enrollment growth with quality among the UNC system institutions in recent years, focusing on retention and graduation, culminating with the largest ever class of graduates in 2020 through 2021, awarding 5,117 degrees. And whereas he received approval for 17 new baccalaureates and graduate level programs, growth of doctoral degrees, and advanced many distance learning options, including clinical research, an accelerated RN to BSN program, top 20 in the nation, by the way, and an executive MBA. And whereas Chancellor Sartorelli oversaw the expansion of the university's physical campus with approximately $500 million in construction, and provided the leadership during the aftermath of Hurricane Florence, as well as the worst global pandemic in a century. And whereas he connected with all 58 presidents of North Carolina's community colleges to develop a statewide initiative to create 45 pathways to excellence partnerships for community college students. And whereas Chancellor Sartorelli has significantly strengthened the university's relationship with international institutions, moving from 52 partnerships 6 years ago to 113 in 2021, and advanced business community relations with more than 100 Fortune 500 companies recruiting on campus today, up from only 19 in 2015. And whereas under his leadership, UNCW earned the elevated designation of doctoral universities, high research activities, R2 institution by the Carnegie Classification of Institutions of Higher Education in 2018, and is ranked among the nation's top public national universities for the past 3 years by the U.S. News and World Report. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Mayor and City Council of the City of Wilmington officially honors Chancellor Sartorelli on this May 3rd, 2022, for his commitment and dedication to the Wilmington community and to one of the great universities at UNC Wilmington. Chancellor Sartorelli.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and the City Council and Mayor Pro Temp. I want to basically thank each and every one of you for what you've done to help us to solidify the university and to achieve top 100 best of the public universities in the country. There are only 3 universities in the system in that category: Chapel Hill, NC State, and UNCW. So that's very, very special. With $615 million of investment in infrastructure, I think the university is well positioned for the next 10, 15, 25 years. Because in 25 years, we're going to be celebrating the centennial. And by then, I estimate that we should be a university of probably 28 to 30,000 students, a major doctoral university with all kinds of possibilities and opportunities in engineering, in nursing, et cetera, for the citizens of the city and the county and the state. So I think the best days of UNCW are ahead of us. I think I came in and I've been able to help solidify and by the way, I want to thank you, Mayor, specifically because you were in the search committee that selected me 7.5 years ago. So I think you've got good eye for people, good people. So thank you very much, and I'm going to be coming back. I'm a member of the board of directors of the North Carolina Biotechnology Center. They want me to continue on it, and there may be a couple of other boards that I may be participating in. So I'm very excited about it. But in fact, I don't know if you do know or not, but they named one of the buildings after me on campus. And so that makes it very special, attaches me even more to not only to this great city, but to this great university. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. You made a difference. Next presentation is a proclamation naming May 21st through the 27th, 2022 as Safe Boating Week. And at this time, I'd like to recognize Mr. Otis J. White, who is the commander of the local power squadron chapter here in Wilmington. If they'll please join me up front.
Mr. Mayor.
Come on, guys. City of Wilmington proclamation reads, whereas North Carolina has 5,000 miles of water shoreline and 361,000 registered boats in the state. Seems like a lot of them are on the Intercoastal Waterway these days. Yeah. And whereas boating and fishing are one of the state's most popular year-round activities, and whereas on average, 630 people die in the United States each year in boating-related accidents, and approximately 80% of those fatalities are caused by drowning. And whereas in approximately 86% of drowning cases, the victim was not wearing a life jacket. And whereas it is apparent that wearing a life jacket is the single most important factor in reducing boating-related deaths. And whereas the National Safe Boating Council, supported by the U.S. Coast Guard and other national organizations, has set May 21st through the 27th, 2022 as National Safe Boating Week. Now, therefore, on behalf of the Wilmington City Council, I, Bill Safford, Mayor of the City of Wilmington, do hereby support the efforts of the Cape Fear Sail and Power Squadrons and the National Safe Boating Council and proclaim May 21st to the 27th, 2022 as Safe Boating Week in the City of Wilmington and the start of the year-round effort to promote safe boating and urge all persons to wear a life jacket at all times while boating. So, Commander, thank you so much, and thank you for everything you folks do every day to protect our community and our citizens. And with that, I'll turn it over.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We appreciate it very much. Every year we come and you give us the proclamation, and we appreciate bringing the attention to what's important about boating safety. First, I'd like to introduce Jim Blair, Christy Blair. They're members of our squadron and boaters. David Parker, who's our safety officer, and Ron Hoddes, who's our boating officer. May I just ask real quick, how many of you have boats? This message is for you. The reason we're dressed this way tonight is to remind folks that when something terrible happens on the water, you don't have time to go dig around and find a life jacket. With 86% of the deaths being people who weren't wearing one, the answer is wear one when you leave the dock and wear one when you come back. That's the only way you're going to be safe. It's just like your seatbelt. You don't wait until you're in an accident to put your seatbelt on. You put your seatbelt on when you get into the car, start it up, and begin to drive. So our reminder to you today is please wear your life jackets when you leave the dock until you come back. And that way, you'll stay safe. We recently had 6 people who were rescued by the Coast Guard off the coast of New Hanover County. Those 6 people all had their life jackets on, and they also had their personal identification devices that were beaming their location to the Coast Guard so they could go and find them quickly and save them in the waves. That's my message tonight. Thank you so much. And thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can we get a picture? Thank you.
It's time to ask the Chair, Carol Stein, and the Vice Chair, Steve Cinder, for the WMPO Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee to come forward. Right here. City of Wilmington proclamation reads, whereas the Wilmington City Council is committed to the promotion of safe and convenient bicycling for both transportation and recreation, and whereas the City of Wilmington is committed to promoting the safe use of bicycles on the city streets and trails through projects such as the Gary Shellcross City Trail, the River to Sea Bikeway, the Ann Street Bicycle Boulevard, bike lanes, intersection improvements, and the bicycle facilities included in the city's 2014 transportation bond projects. And whereas education about bicycle safety and maintenance will encourage children and adults to operate their bicycles in a safe manner on all bicycle and shared access facilities. And whereas the City of Wilmington has supported education through the Watch for Me North Carolina and BA Looker safety campaigns, and whereas the City of Wilmington has been designated as a bike-friendly community by the League of American Bicyclists, and whereas the Wilmington City Council is committed to alleviating traffic congestion by providing choices in transportation infrastructure and ensuring a clean and healthy environment. Now, therefore, the Wilmington City Council proclaims May as Bicycle Awareness Month and will continue to promote safe cycling opportunities for the Wilmington citizens. And thank you for everything you folks do in making those trails happen. So congratulations.
Thank you, Mayor Sappho. And on behalf of the WMPO's Bike Ped Committee, I would like to express our greatest thanks for the continued support.
And I just want to say I want to say thank you to the citizens of this community that have supported our transportation bond initiatives to pull more bicycle trails throughout our community. So thank you very much. Thank you. Next presentation is the City Manager's 2023 recommended budget. At this time, I'd like to recognize Ms. Laura Mortel, who is our Budget Director. Ms. Mortel.
Good evening. It's my privilege to be able to provide information on the City Manager's FY22 or 23 recommended budget. Tonight, we are going to be looking at the past timeline, some of the budget benchmarks that we have done together in a collaborative manner to engage and talk about our strategies and how we're going to develop this budget. We kicked it off in November with a work session, followed by 2 other work sessions in January and March. And we refined those strategies to develop the budget that is in front of you today. Those strategies include a property tax adjustment tied to employee retention and attraction. We want to continue the acceleration of the transportation projects to be completed in 3 years. We want to continue our inclusionary city government. We want to be very optimistic in our sales tax revenue. We want to use strategic fund balance and continue core services with limited additions and prioritize our enhancements based on the priorities that we have set forth. And we want to continue the momentum that we have with our affordable housing initiative. Some of the economic drivers that helped us frame the budget, we had federal assistance one time that was coming into the system. $4.6 trillion came into the system by the federal government. 52 million made it to North Carolina, and 31 so far million has made it to Wilmington. This does not include the infrastructure bill that was passed last fall. Inflation has been on everyone's mind. It is a 41-year record as of March, which is 8.5% over the prior year, and it has created a perfect storm where we have customer demand and a tight supply chain, which is causing the result of more money chasing less goods. In an effort to slow the economy, the Federal Reserve has increased the interest rate by 25 basis points. And that's the first time they've done that in 3 years, and they have indicated that they're going to be doing it a couple more times in the upcoming year. We've had an unprecedented shift in the labor market. Some of that behavior has started with what has been called upskilling during the pandemic, where people have changed the skills and gone to school so they can go to different jobs that now focus on what their home life, work balance expectations are in today's world. We have retirement, those at retirement age were holding back, and now that they're fiscally happy with where they are, where the pandemic stands, they're starting to retire out of the system. We have technology disruptions, which is relates to remote work that where an employee resides is no longer a stumbling block. So we have several jobs out there in several jurisdictions that allow remote work, and that is now something that we are working with in our applications. We have the international unrest where Russia is having sanctions, and those sanctions are trickling down internationally to the everyday citizen through gas, groceries, and the supply chain is yet again being even more tight. All these things we have considered during the budget. When we get a little closer to home, We have the human capital is stretched thin. Our staff vacancies are higher than have ever been in the past. It started out in specific areas, are now widespread to all departments. Hiring managers are seeing fewer applicants and even fewer qualified applicants. And those that have applied are on the market for a very short time. Some supplies are taking longer to get, so our supplies are getting less and less. We have vehicles that are getting canceled, and we've been told that some of our vehicles we won't be able to replace for 2 years. The costs are increasing not only with our supplies and our equipment. As you can imagine, our contract services are experiencing the same difficulties as we are, and so those costs are also going up. Over the last 4 years, we've had revenue trend disruptions that I have discussed in the past. We've had 3 hurricanes since fiscal year 2019. We have the one-time federal stimulus that is going into the system and then leaving the system, but it's increasing our sales tax. And then we have legislative changes which relates to the third-party internet sales that started in around fiscal year 20, and we don't have any data to actually help us understand the impact. On the good note, the only benefit that is increasing is the city's share to the local retirement system that has gone up by less than 1% for each of those categories, normal employees and for our police officers. This is good news because the increase for the past 4 years have been 1.2, and the increase has decreased to 1%. It's still an increase, but it's not as high. So, and then on the good news too, that health insurance is going to be remaining flat for FY23. So funding at a glance. The total budget system-wide is a little over $251 million. On the left-hand side, where does funding come from? You can see that the property tax makes up about 34%. Other financing, which is our fund balance or our transfers between funds, is 22%. Charges for services, about 16.5%, and sales tax, which is 15%. On the right-hand side, it's where does funding pay for? 25% of our overall budget goes for public safety efforts around the city. General government, which is our support agencies, similar to city administration, HR, finance, IT, take up about 21% of that. Our proprietary, our enterprise funds, are about 13%, almost 14%. So now let's get into the highlights of the recommended budget. The overall budget increased by roughly $18 million, and these are the categories that our priorities have fallen into. You can see the workforce housing, or workforce, which is mainly our compensation study that we've implemented. We have service improvement results, which really our public safety falls in there. And then we have some infrastructure in our affordable housing, and I'll highlight those as we go through the presentation. FY23, the investment in our development of our human capital that meets the needs of the growing community is by far one of the most important budgetary aspects. The city wants to stay competitive and to continue the level of service that our citizens and our visitors have come to expect. The FY23 recommended budget continues the compensation plan implemented by Council in April, brings the salaries to market wages. To accomplish this, a total of $7.2 million has been added to the budget, and 6.5 of that is associated with the general fund. The recommended budget continues with the second year of a 3-year plan to increase council stipend to the average benchmark for North Carolina cities. The city is also increasing our part-time diversity, equity, and inclusion specialist from part-time to full-time. This position will be instrumental in working with our DEI manager and implementing the city's first diversity, equity, and inclusion strategic plan. In FY22, the city funded a senior contract specialist with a focus on minority, women, and disadvantaged businesses. To better understand the availability of minority and women-owned businesses in our area, the city is recommending funding for a disparities study to be conducted. And lastly, in the Rise Together initiative, we have the fire department who's going to continue a process that they started in FY22, and it's the Youth Academy. Although the Youth Academy is open for everyone, they will be having a special focus on recruiting marginalized populations to educate those traditionally not applying for this role. We have the transportation category. The goal is to accelerate our transportation projects to be completed in 3 years. What staff believe is going to be the last phase of achieving this goal includes a second paralegal is planned for FY23 to help with the many right-of-way acquisitions and in the pipeline. The team created 1 attorney and 2 paralegals will help with acquiring easements, right-of-ways, and real estate. The FY22 budget also funds 2 project managers to help spread the CIP workload to expedite those plans in engineering. And the second year of a multi-year plan to fund the capital improvement project management software is also in the budget. The city manages over $350 million in active capital improvement projects, as is in the process of creating another one this coming year. The CIP ACE provides a comprehensive software packages that ensures the tracking, transparency, and reporting consistency of all of those projects. Wave Transit will be receiving in the budget an additional 3% on top of their normal 3%, so it's about $46,000. And this is to help fund some of the new redesign improvements related to the frequency of 3 routes. The bus service on Market, which is Route 108, Carolina Beach Road, Route 201, and Longleaf Park, Route 205, will go from 60 minutes to 30-minute frequencies with this amount with our share of the money. Additionally, the new amphitheater downtown, we have budgeted $16,000 in the parking fund to help with the trolley and during the concert weekends to help disperse those crowds in a safe and orderly fashion. Service improvements. There is a focus on safety and wellness in our community. Funding in an amount of $702,000 is approved for the River Lights Fire Station. The River Lights Fire Station is set to open in June or July of the calendar year 2023. The funding amount allows for the hiring of 15 personnel in January of 2023 to run a training academy in time for the station's opening. The Police Downtown Task Force is responding to greater increases in demand due to the increases in residential units, as well as entertainment venues in the downtown area. The budget funds 5 officers. 3 of those officers will be funded in the general fund, and 2 of those officers are planned to be funded in the municipal district fund. 2 crime investigators have also been recommended. Even though violent crime was reduced last year, gun crime continues. With the partnership with the federal government and the state, the Gun Crimes Task Force was recently created solely to focus on gun crimes in the region. This will allow the police department to expand their reach. A construction inspector will help meet the high demands of the construction assignments to ensure the city's built public infrastructure is getting the attention and detail to quality that the citizens' money are paying for. The city has over 900 square feet that is maintained by the Public Services Buildings Department. The average open ticket for each of those staff when they come in the morning is 20 per day. As soon as they close one opens up. This additional senior maintenance specialist will allow for some relief, reducing the square footage of the facility's maintenance per staff by about 12.5%. And affordable housing, the budget continues to support the need for affordable housing. Instituted in this recommended budget is a dedicated 1 cent on the property tax rate for a total of $2,150,103. To reach this amount, an infusion of $567,000 was added to the budget supporting the city's affordable housing programs. The city has been an entitlement city since 1975, receiving federal funding for the community's low to moderate income citizens with suitable affordable housing and services. The Community Development and Housing Administration budget in FY23 increased by about 10%. This is mainly due to addition of a housing counselor in response to the city's new certification of housing counseling agency in the third quarter of 22. The city's housing stock availability to be used for home ownership and rehabilitation programs are dwindling over the last couple of years. Enough that some of the programs didn't need another infusion of money. We have shifted the FY22 transfer that would go to the rental rehabilitation and shifted that to the owner-occupied rehabilitation program. This program works with homeowners to bring their homes up to the housing quality standards set by the federal government. The average rehabilitation takes about 6 months, so this funding will allow for at least 8 projects. The home ownership program and the GAP financing program will be receiving an additional $600,000 for a total of $1.6 million. This funding will be used to help give working families an opportunity to own a house without becoming cost burdensome, and it will also allow the city to respond and help leverage new home stock by partnering with developers on projects. In addition to this 1 cent on the property tax rate, the city is the recommended budget actually assigns $1.5 million to restricted fund balance to wait for further council direction on how to use it for affordable housing. This brings the city's FY23 general fund contribution for affordable housing to $3.6 million. A little more than $1,250,000 is planned for outside agencies. This is a 10% increase over FY22 for the public service agencies as well as the civic partner process. A slight deviation in the plan has removed 3 of those economic development agencies out of the process and into an annual service contract. Funding can be found in the sundry section started on page 92 of the recommended budget for the plan that is identified with these monies. So how are we going to pay for this? Here are some of the adjustments that has happened in the budget. In the general fund, the assessed property values totaled $21.7 billion, which is just over $49 million from last year, close to a 0% increase. And this was mainly due to the Brownsfield credits and the appeals from the county's reappraisal from last year. The recommended budget requests 1.42 cents property tax adjustment, bringing the property tax rate from 38.08 to 39.5 cents per 100 assessed value. This represents 3.7% and generates a little more than $3 million. To provide an example of the impacts that the residents will see, the median assessed single value family home in the city of Wilmington in January of 2022 totals $268,500. From this example residential price point, owners should see an increase of $38 annually from $1,200 to $1,061, and a $3 monthly increase from $85 to $88. Sales tax is generally the most difficult to forecast because of the dependency on consumer confidence as well as the economy. Sales tax is coming in greater than budget, and staff is budgeting optimistically based on recent trends. However, with the inflation, the supply chain issues, the stimulus funding leaving the system's growth cannot be expected to remain at the same levels. This is why we arrived at the current projection of $5.2 million over the current budget. And as you can see from here, the budget is balanced at $130.4 million. There are changes being requested for the first time in the Municipal District Fund. Wilmington established the Municipal District Fund in December of 2016 to provide professional services above and beyond what is already provided by the city. The principal purpose for the creation of the districts was to add cleanliness, beautification, and public safety. For the first time since the creation, FY23 budget reflects a 1-cent adjustment from 5.47 cents to 6.47 cents per 100 assessed value. 1 cent equals just over $81,000. This increase is recommended to support the 2 downtown police officers recommended to respond to the increased demand in the downtown area. It should be noted that yesterday, May 2nd, the MSD Advisory Committee met and did not support the city's recommended increase. And using the same price point to give an example of the impacts, with a median single-family resident value of $268,500, from this example, they would see an increase of $27 annually from $147 to $174, and $2 monthly from $12 to $15. And their sales tax is budgeted similar to the general fund. It's optimistic, and it goes on based on the 2-year trends that we are seeing. It is budgeted at $58,000, and for the entire year, we should see a roughly $222,000. And the highlights that you can see, it's budgeted at $781,000. It has $184,000 for the downtown police officers. The cars that are associated with those officers are actually in the general fund in case the police needed to go outside of the district area with the vehicles. And then we have the same flat amount for the professional service contract.
Could you repeat what you just said about
The vehicles?
Please.
The vehicles are being paid for by the general fund because the officers, anything that is in the MSD has to remain within the bounds of the MSD. And so if the MSD paid for the vehicles, police officers wouldn't be able to leave the area, the boundaries of the MSD. So we paid for them in the general fund.
So the MSD is going to fund the 2 police officers, but
Yes.
they'll not be considered full-time in the CBD.
They will be considered full-time in CBD. They can only stay in the CBD.
Okay, I'll ask a question some other time. But I'm just confused about the vehicles and the police. If they're confined to the CBD, they'll be on foot patrol, bicycle?
They will be using the vehicles, but just in case the vehicles are needed somewhere else, we paid for them by the general fund.
So who will be driving the vehicles if they're needed somewhere else?
It will not be the 2 that are in the CBD.
Okay, thank you.
Our enterprise funds, a brief discussion on them. They are responding also similar to the general fund with the economic environment discussed earlier. To remain solvent, we've had to increase several of their fees. Stormwater is balanced at $14.7 million. The 1% ERU, which is the equivalent residential unit, is a plan and has been for the last several years. It's changing from $8.43 to $8.51. CIP transfer is 4.8, and the impact of the comp study will be helped with that increase. Recycling and trash is balanced at just over $11 million, and they are increasing by 5% across the board for services rendered. This will support ongoing needs such as the annual vehicles that were purchased in FY22. There were 13 of them, and the impacts of the compensation study as well as the estimates for fuel for the future year. Parking is balanced at $6.5 million with a myriad of fee adjustments, which are also supported by the advisory board. It's going to support ongoing capital needs, the compensation study, and bank processing fees. The municipal golf fund is also balanced at just under $2 million. There's a $2 increase for green fees adjustments, which is also supported by the advisory committee and is supported by the rate study that was presented last year. It should be noted that the funding that previously went from the golf course to the general fund to pay for services incurred by the support services like HR, budget, IT, and city administration is now in this recommended budget being shifted and sent to a CIP project. And this will help with future capital improvement projects. This is a deviation from how we handle enterprise funds, but the need exists and the support to support the move. So next steps, tomorrow we will publish the recommended budget on the city's website. It will be available in the city manager's office, the clerk's office. We'll probably rerun highlights of GTV, and then we will have it in New Hanover County Library downtown. And to end the presentation with a reminder of future budget benchmarks. The public hearing is scheduled for May 17th at a regular council meeting. An opportunity for council feedback is May 27th at a scheduled work session and in budget adoption in June. If there are any questions, please don't hesitate to contact myself or the managers, and we'll be happy to facilitate gathering that information so the May 27th work session is productive for you. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Martell. Thank you. Mr. Waddell?
So just, I realize this isn't a budget work session, so we're kind of reserving all of our in-depth questions since we have a lengthy agenda today until the next budget work session, which is when?
The 27th of May.
All right, excellent. Thank you. Looking forward to it.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Brings us to the next item of business, which is our consent agenda, items 1 through 2. If any council member would like to hear any of those separately, what are the wishes of the council with respect to the consent agenda? We have a motion approved by Councilmember Barnett, second by Councilmember Spears. Discussion, all in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? The item passes unanimously. Next item of business, public information. There are no public information speakers that have been scheduled to speak tonight, so that brings us to our public hearing. First public hearing this evening is item PH1, which is an ordinance amending the official zoning map of the city to rezone property containing 3.29 acres of land located at 1610 Tiburon Drive from O&I CD, Office and Institutional Conditional District, to a new O&I CD, Office and Institutional Conditional District, to allow for a restaurant. This time I'd like to recognize our city manager, Mr. Caudle, but before I do so, I will also note that whoever makes the motion must read a consistency statement and reasonableness statement for the record. Mr. Caudle.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, members of council. Brian Chambers, our senior planner, will overview this item for us.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. This site is located at the southeast corner of Tiburon Drive and Independence Boulevard. It's approximately 3.29 acres in size and it's currently vacant. This image shows the site in the context of the surrounding area. Here are some images of the subject property. And here are some images of the adjacent properties. In July of 2011, the council rezoned this site from R15 to from R15 and MFM multifamily to an office and institutional district for the Live Oak Bank Professional Office Park. That conditional district allows for a maximum building square footage across the entire site and limits uses to banking, business services, and medical and professional offices. The current conditional district master plan would allow for roughly 34,000 square feet of non-residential space on this property. The applicant proposed to rezone the site from the existing O&I CD to a new O&I CD for a new restaurant use. Traffic data indicates that Independence Boulevard in this location is operating within its design capacity. There is not a substantial increase in traffic with the estimated peak hour vehicle trips associated with this proposal when compared to the potential build-out of the property under the current zoning. Based on the intensity of this proposal, a traffic impact analysis was required. That analysis was approved on March 28th and determined that there would be no off-site improvements required. Access to the site would be provided by 2 full access driveways on Tiburon Drive. The Cross City Trail runs along Independence Boulevard frontage, and there's a multi-use path that runs along the opposite side of Tiburon Drive. A 5-foot wide sidewalk will be required along Tiburon and run across the distance of the property and link to a mid-block crossing in front of Live Oak Bank. A transitional buffer would be required along the southern property line. The applicant proposes a 20-foot wide undisturbed buffer. Any protected trees within the required streetscape must be retained, and any trees or shrubs located within the transitional buffer must also be retained. And I would like to point out, given the proximity to the existing single-dwelling districts in the area, no amplified sound would be allowed on this site. Here are the elevations that were provided by the applicant. The site is located within an area identified as a greenfield site multi-use place area of opportunity and a mixed-use place mixed-use center on our comprehensive plan growth strategies map. The plan encourages infill that enhances the desired character of the area, improves access to goods, services, and amenities, and improves the overall quality of life. The plan calls for pedestrian-oriented commercial development at key locations along our corridors, and the plan also supports commercial development that is designed at a height, mass, scale, and form that is appropriate and provides a suitable transition. The proposed zoning would allow for compatible commercial use that would add to services available in this neighborhood, and the use provides a suitable transition between the surrounding residential areas and the existing commercial and office development. Staff believes this request is consistent with our comprehensive plan. The request is reasonable in the public interest and is recommending conditional approval, and the Planning Commission at their April meeting voted unanimously to recommend approval of this request. I would be happy to answer any questions, and the applicant, I believe, is prepared to make a presentation as well.
Do we have any questions for Brian? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. This time I'd like to recognize the applicant. Please come forward.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of council. My name is Joe Taylor, attorney with Murchison Taylor and Gibson, attorneys in downtown Wilmington. I am the attorney for Covey LLC, the applicant in this rezoning request. As you can see on the slide, that is our development team, and we're all here to answer any questions that any of you might have or any of the public might have. Brian's done a very good job of recounting the review of our request and gave us a really wonderful staff review, for which we're very grateful to the staff. Also, as Brian told you, the Planning Commission voted unanimously to recommend the approval of this rezoning request to you all with the conditions that the staff had asked for. Those conditions are all acceptable to the applicant. The Covey site is part of the original Live Oak Bank rezoning campus. It sits in a current ONICD designation, as Brian told you, for offices. And what we are asking to do is to remove it from that conditional use district and put it in another new ONI conditional use district with only one permitted use, and that would be this restaurant, and only as it can only be built according to the site plan that we have submitted to the staff and to the planning staff. The difference between the original campus rezoning and now is that today this site, the Covey site, is part of a very vibrant business hub with diverse residential living, but with no accessible dining facilities at all. And we went and looked at all you all have done recently with the new ordinances, the Create Wilmington Comprehensive Plan, which one of the main goals of that plan, as shown on the internet, is to locate restaurants in residential areas closely and more convenient. And that was a big part of our decision making when this is part of the campus site. that we want to convert. The restaurant site embraces walking. If you'll notice, the One Midtown Apartments and Independence East both can access this by the trail, as can the staff of Live Oak Bank, all of the rest of the businesses in Shipyard Commons, and all adjoining neighborhoods. It's a very walkable neighborhood restaurant. That's our design. This is designed as a neighborhood walkable restaurant, and the plan is done that way, and the size is done that way. The use of our site for the Covey request is only 6,400 square feet. It'll be much less intrusive than the current permitted 3-story, 36,000 square foot office building. And it meets the goals of Create Wilmington Comprehensive Plan and the Wilmington Land Code. And a few points that I want to point out to you in that regard, which we took great care to include in our design of this facility, is that the Covey restaurant uses only about half of the allowable buildable square footage under its current zoning. Only half. More importantly than that, it uses less than half of the 98,000 square feet of impervious surface which are permitted for this site now. The Covey request allows many more significant trees to be saved than any other possible use of this site, and those trees are magnificent, as I'm sure you've seen. This development, with its small 1-story size, saves more trees than anything possible to be done. In addition, the Covey request uses 21% less parking spaces allowed by right under the ordinance as it exists now, and that's due to walkability. That's the design of this project. It's supposed to be a neighborhood restaurant for the neighborhoods in Midtown. One of the big important parts that I would point out to you is that the Covey restaurant request will generate only about half of the daily traffic that the 3-story office building would, as shown in our TIA, and it requires no traffic improvements. The staff, Brian, concluded, and I'd like to just read, if I could, the staff's recommendation, because I think this hits the heart of everything we've tried to do to comply with all the new requirements in all your new ordinances. And that is, the Covey proposed zoning request would allow for a compatible commercial use that would add to the services available to the surrounding neighborhoods. The use provides a suitable transition between the surrounding residential areas and the existing commercial and office development. The proposed design is compatible with the surrounding area. This is our Covey project, and this is what we tried to design to meet everything you all have worked so hard to create in Wilmington for the last few years. We're delighted to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for the applicant?
Are there any more pictures? I like the pictures I'm looking at. Are there any more pictures? This is just it. These are the last two.
This was the last picture.
This is the last one?
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
All right, it looks great. It looks great.
I have more I can send you.
All right.
Anybody else? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Taylor.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Okay, at this time we'll open up the public hearing. I'll set the public hearings for 30 minutes. Each speaker will be allotted 3 minutes. The clerk will be keeping a time clock, and when you hear that buzzer go off, time's up. So if you'll come forward and please state your name for the record. Public hearing is now open.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. My name is Christine Hughes, and I reside at 1843 Hawthorne Road, not too far from the subject property. My husband Daniel and I are here tonight in support of the proposed rezoning. It's really unusual that someone comes before you asking for a lesser intense development than what is currently permitted, and we're so pleased to see this proposal come forward. Excuse me. A quarter of a mile is a generally accepted distance that people are willing to walk to a destination. And by my rough calculation, the proposed restaurant would be within a quarter mile of about 200 residential units and more than 650 office workers. And it would be within a reasonable bicycling distance of even more. Dining within walking or biking distance, generally putting uses close to residential uses, putting commercial uses close to residential uses really helps mitigate traffic impacts. This site is well connected. It's connected to the Cross City Trail along Independence and along Tiburon Drive. This makes it really consistent with our outstanding comprehensive plan, especially the policies for transportation. The proposed trip generation is less than that's permitted under the current zoning, which again is so unusual to see. This would integrate non-office uses into the overall Live Oak Bank campus, which really brings to life the vision for the mixed-use concept that is outlined in the comprehensive plan. There would be independent yet adjacent residential, commercial, and office uses. This site would not be completely built out. There would be so many trees preserved, which is such a wonderful thing to see, particularly given that this portion of Oleander Drive is bookended by two developments, one at Oleander and one at Shipyard, where they really didn't do much to save any trees. So we were really thrilled to see the number of trees that would be preserved on this site. The trees along this portion of Independence Boulevard, we're so lucky that we still have them, and it's such a unique setting. So we were very happy to see that. We will be among those neighbors who will be walking or biking to this restaurant should it be approved. Staff supported it, the Planning Commission supports it, and I hope that the City Council will do the same tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Next, please.
My name is Ralph Nesbitt. I am president of the Independence East Homeowners Association. We are directly next door to where this property is going to be. And there are 45 homes, mostly retired people, that live in Independence East. We are very excited about this proposal. We hope you will approve it. It's going to be truly a neighborhood concept. We have mostly retirees in our neighborhood, and just about all of us will be able to walk to this restaurant, which is great. But I think it'll enhance a lot, not only for our neighborhood, but for Wilmington in general, because Wilmington, I think, really needs a restaurant of this caliber. And Live Oak Bank is a tremendous neighbor to us. And this is kind of an extension of Live Oak Bank. And we're excited and hope you will endorse this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nesbitt. Thank you. Next.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and council members. My name is Rachel McCrae, and I live at 2308 Sterling Place, just close to the restaurant. Hope that you will approve this tonight. Just uniquely, I was born and raised in Wilmington and grew up in Midtown area, and when I was a little child, I cut the ribbon that opened Hanover Center that my dad built years ago. And just in this area, they said to my father, "This is never going to survive here. You're crazy to put a shopping center here." And every time I see Mr. Mahan out and about, we've been talking about this restaurant for, I know, at least 6 years. And every time we see each other, we go, restaurant, and we've got the perfect site for it. And so we've been thinking and talking and hoping, and every time I see a piece fit into place for this with the people who've come here to start the project, I don't think anyone really fully realizes how much the employees are going to be really well taken care of long term. I think the food is key. I don't know what plans are for hiring a chef yet, but it's just, we are so excited because we've been talking about it forever. And I really just, other than a few people who I hope will come along and enjoy it just as much as I think everybody else will when it's built and open with your approval in the next year or so. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor and City Council members, my name is James Smith. I reside at 54 Pelican Drive at Wrightsville Beach. Full disclosure, I'm the vice president of the company that currently owns the site, but I have no personal gain whether this gets approved or not. I just wanted to remind you of what we worked on so hard, you all worked on, Planning Commission worked on, and planning staff in working toward mixed-use zoning, and hopefully you're going to get more applications like this that provide mixed use, as Joe has so aptly pointed out. It's going to be a great use of this site. Again, it's what we've been working on so hard, and I hope you would approve this rezoning. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. Madam Clerk, have we received any additional comments?
Yes, sir, we did. The first one is from Patricia Horn of 216 South Front Street. I'm writing to pledge my full support of the new restaurant Kobe, which will be amazing, new, and much-needed addition to this neighborhood. I'm excited about this new dining experience and look forward to visiting there. The second one is from Kelvin Wells, 1905 Ashbrook Drive. I have lived on Ashbrook Drive for 46 years and have never had a fine dining restaurant in our area. My wife and I are extremely excited about Kobe being within a mile or so from our house, as we eat out just about every night. Please approve the restaurant, as it will be a wonderful addition to our neighborhood as well as the city. We have known the manager from Linville, and he runs a wonderful restaurant. Thank you for your consideration. From Kent Anderson of 1929 London Lane. We shop at Independence Mall and New Hanover Shopping Center and bank at Wells Fargo quite often. There are numerous fast food restaurants in the immediate area and very limited sit-down, higher quality restaurants. Henry's and the new First Break have been our options without going downtown or to Mayfair. We believe Covey would be greatly improve the overall shopping experience, and the incremental business would obviously benefit those retailers in the immediate area. From Dave Austin of 3711B Reston Court. I am concerned about the placement of any restaurant between two housing communities. A restaurant has a high probability of adding a great deal of noise, vocal and or music, especially on the weekends and in the evenings where there is outside dining. The added traffic to an area overburdened Independence Boulevard is also a concern. While the current owner may try to assuage nearby homeowners with a promise to be a good neighbor, the next owner, and there will be one, is not likely to have that commitment. There are ample locations and more desirable, visible, and with much better egress and ingress sites appropriate for this fine restaurant. From Benjamin Van of 122 North 7th Street. We are extremely excited to have Kobe Restaurant as another small business to the Wilmington market. My name is Benjamin Van, owner of F45 Trading Mayfair and F45 Trading Midtown Wilmington. Kobe will add a much-needed restaurant in the area which we are willing to throw our full support behind. After understanding the concept and attention to detail, Kobe will be a massive success while becoming a Wilmington staple. Please reach out if you have any questions. From Michael McGinty of 1610 Tabaron Drive. Michael McGinty of 313 Ann Street in reference to 1610 Taberlin Drive. I'm writing to you to express my support of the proposed development that this is a restaurant to be known as Kobe. The proposal seems like a perfect use for the space, and the plans for the restaurant building promises a good experience. Please vote to approve this proposal. Krista Preville of 7102 E Creeks Edge Drive. A much-needed addition to the Midtown area. This is a nice, high-end restaurant. Many people would love and look forward and appreciate your quality of this restaurant. Ben Wells. Dear council members, thank you for your time and opportunity to share our thoughts on the Covey restaurant. I live in Forest Hills. I am not in the immediate vicinity of the restaurant. I am within 5 minutes of the property. This location would be great for a restaurant. In the immediate surroundings, we do not have a very good selection of local restaurants that are not either chains, downtown, or in major shopping centers. This would be a beautiful addition to the area. The restaurant and site plans are beautiful and inspire me to visit when it is complete. As a realtor and building contractor, I know how hard it is to find the best use for a property when planning. This definitely works well. As a member of the community and regular supporter of our local restaurants, Covey would be a great addition to the area. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Any other questions from council? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing and ask for the wishes of council. We have a motion to approve by Mayor Pro Tem Haynes, second by Councilmember Waddell. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please. Oh, I'm sorry, Mrs. Haynes, will you please read the consistent statement for the record?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to approve the proposed amendment to rezone the property located at 1610 Tiburon Drive from an existing office and institutional conditional district to the new office and institutional conditional district for a restaurant use, and find it to be consistent with the relevant policies in the comprehensive plan based on the application materials and the information provided at the public hearing and in the staff report, and to find approval of the rezoning request is reasonable and in the public interest for the following reasons. The proposed rezoning would allow for a compatible commercial use that would add to the services available to the surrounding neighborhood.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
That item passes unanimously on first reading. Is there a motion to waive second reading? Motion made by Councilmember Rivenbark, second by Councilmember Anderson. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item passes unanimously on first as well as second reading. Thank you. That brings us to our next item of business, which is item PH2, which is an ordinance amending the official zoning map of the city to rezone property containing 3.07 acres of land located at 5500 Riceville Avenue from CB, Community Business and Office and Institutional District, to MD-17CD, High Density Multi-Dwelling Residential District, Conditional District for a 32-unit townhome development. At this time, I'd like to recognize our city manager, Mr. Caudle. Mr. Caudle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Jeff Walton, our associate planner, will overview this item.
And I will also note for the record that whoever makes the motion must also read a consistency and reasonableness statement. Whatever. Go ahead. Come on, Bear.
Thank you. As stated, the applicant seeks to rezone the property to ND-17 for a 32-unit townhome development. As you can see, the site is located along Oleander, north of Park Avenue, near the hospital. These are photos of the subject site that show it as a vacant wooded site bordering Wrightsville Park and French Road. These are some of the adjacent properties along Wrightsville and adjacent properties adjacent on Park Avenue. The subject site is currently vacant and split zoned between CB and ONI zoning. In 2001, a 1.52 acre portion of the property was generally rezoned from ONI to CB. Though no site plan was submitted, the applicant believed that the site was suitable for light to moderate commercial usage, consistent with the CB district. At the time, both staff and Planning Commission recommended approval. On the proposed site plan, units would be set along Wrightsville and French Road with parking in the rear yards. The development includes 2 driveway accesses off Park Avenue. No driveways are proposed off of Wrightsville or French Road. For the parking, the applicant proposes 78 parking spaces, consisting of 66 standard size, 10 compact spaces, and 2 electrical vehicle-ready spaces. French Road is an unimproved 50-foot wide public road that abuts the site to the west. Land Development Code would require improvements in paving to include either the installation of curb, gutter, and sidewalk, or a drainage swale and pedestrian access along the subject's frontage. Final improvements would be determined through the formal TRC process. The site is located at an identified neighborhood node
mixed-use center and within a high-density transition of area of opportunity as identified in the Create Wilmington Comprehensive Plan. A neighborhood node area promotes uses such as small-scale retail, office, or new development within a mixed-use product. The plan calls for a small commercial mixed-use center in a central location that would serve the surrounding residential areas. The Wrightsville Avenue 2030 plan land use map recommends supporting commercial zoning designation at this location. Though staff would support more residential on this property and along Wrightsville corridor in general, inclusion of a small commercial use at this site is also encouraged. Therefore, staff believes the proposed request is not consistent with the Create Wilmington Comprehensive Plan and the Wrightsville Avenue 2030 plan. Staff believes the request is not reasonable and not in the public interest and recommends denial. If the Commission elects to recommend approval, there are suggested conditions in the case summary, and the Planning Commission also has reviewed this item and recommends unanimous approval. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Are there any questions for staff? Yes, Mr. Waddell.
I know this was mentioned briefly in the agenda briefing yesterday, and that staff seems to have a firm grasp on it, but this is filling a need of missing middle housing in that area, and I think it's necessary to stress that we don't necessarily need to oversaturate the retail commercial market by requiring development professionals that are filling a need to include unnecessary retail commercial in a project that doesn't warrant it just because the code calls for it. So I think that needs to, we've got to just take closer looks at this and utilize common sense moving forward on projects. I was glad to see the Planning Commission's decision on it.
Sure. Great points.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff?
Yeah, just, I noticed yesterday, the person who presented it said that it was like a 50-50. You were kind of like on the line. You still kind of like on the line.
We have what's called soft denials as staff. So we look at the comprehensive plan, we look at all land use plans like the Wrightsville Avenue 2030 plan, and those plans say a commercial node would be suitable here based on the commercial that's across the street, the pressures that are on Oleander itself. But if you look at the trends of townhome development, multifamily development along Wrightsville Avenue, it does make sense that applying a townhome type development at this location would also be suitable. We feel like that it's suitable for mixed use of residential and a little commercial at this location, but a townhome project would also be very suitable as well.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir. Appreciate
Great.
it.
Thank you.
At this time, I will recognize the applicant.
Good evening, and thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem and members of City Council. My name is Matt Nichols. I'm an attorney in Wilmington. I'm here tonight representing the applicant, ZAC LLC, and Zimmer Development Company. With me tonight from Zimmer Development Company are Lowell Zimmer, Adam Tucker, and Spencer Peterson. Our site designer, John Wayne with Hanover Design, is also here to answer any questions that council may have. And Neil Fleischman, representative of the property owner, is also here. And we thank you for the opportunity to make a brief presentation, really to highlight why we think that the proposed conditional residential rezoning of this property is much better than the current commercial zoning without any conditions on it. I'll go through these slides quickly. I know that the council is familiar with the property in the vicinity. The thing I would point out is really just the obvious. It's a unusually shaped property. It's a U-shaped, horseshoe-shaped property. Secondly, it has quite a bit of frontage on Wrightsville Avenue on a curve. And third, in that interior sort of U-shaped part are two residences currently. So as you'll see, and as Mr. Walton mentioned, the property is currently split zoned, which is less than ideal. But beyond that, it's unconditional commercial rezoning. So if it was developed It wouldn't be anything that would likely come before the city council for any approval. It would just be by right commercial development. And it's vacant. It's been challenging to have a commercial development there due to the shape, and we just think it is much better for a residential development. Here's another vantage point of the property, and you'll see in the next few slides that the property is largely surrounded by residential. And aside from the medical office shown with the purple shade and that vacant CB portion and sort of the corners, as you'll see in the areas highlighted in yellow, it's mostly residential surrounding on three sides. The church is zoned residential to the west, and then in the interior of the property is currently residential. I know that council is very familiar with this vicinity, but as you drive down Wrightsville Avenue, and Wrightsville Avenue has one of our longer streets in town, and it's has different land uses in different parts. But this part in particular is quite residential. You'll see the subject property on the left, which is vacant. As I said, it's sort of on the curve there. Across the street is residential, and it's directly adjacent to residential. This is single-family residential across Wrightsville Avenue. As you look back east on Wrightsville Avenue, you'll see that, again, part of the concern we had was not putting a driveway, a curb cut on Wrightsville Avenue, and our plan does not do that. I think that a commercial development would likely want that with that significant amount of frontage on Wrightsville Avenue. So I think one of the big benefits of our proposed plan is no curb cuts on Wrightsville Avenue. As you go down French Avenue, you can see, again, it just really doesn't lend itself to a commercial development. As you go further down French, let's see, you'll see as you get closer to the intersection of Park Avenue, again, it's largely a residential suburban setting. You'll see here the corner of Park and French Road, subject property on the left-hand side of the screen, residences across the street, and then the next slide I'll show will show you the two residences that are on the interior of the property. And we just think that having residential property is more consistent and more in harmony with the existing area, and particularly these two residences. This is across Park Avenue, and then as you are on Park Avenue looking back toward the west, you'll see the manufactured home development that we're immediately adjacent to on the east. So our site plan, we think, is very efficient and makes very good use of the property. As I mentioned, we're highlighted here all of the residential in the vicinity on three sides, church on the fourth side, and then in the interior is residential. I mentioned too that there's no driveway cuts on Wrightsville Avenue, and we're limiting those to Park Avenue. The traffic impacts for the proposed rezoning they're significantly less. And I would say very significantly less. In the AM peak hour alone, it's about an 80% reduction in traffic. In the PM peak hour, it's nearly a 90% reduction in traffic as compared to a by right commercial build out. So it's not often, I think, people can stand here on a rezoning and say that's the proposed impact. Oftentimes you're looking at 50% or 75%, 100% increases. We're talking about, on the average daily trips, roughly an 85% reduction in traffic from this rezoning compared to a commercial build-out. And these are not my numbers. These are staff numbers in the staff packet. Again, the projected commercial build-out would be over 1,500 trips a day, and this would be 230 trips. So much better from a traffic standpoint, and putting no direct traffic from the project right onto Wrightsville Avenue on that curb. The density is entirely consistent with the area. We're proposing 10.4 units. The manufactured home development next to us is approximately 10.3, and then across the street is R7, and that would allow 6 units. So even though we're asking for the MD17, it's really at the very low end of that. It's just over the 10 units an acre. So it's right in line, we think, with what you would see density-wise in the vicinity. Mr. Walton touched on these, but these are our renderings. We think these are very much consistent and in harmony with the Wrightsville Avenue in that vicinity. We do have a landscape plan. I wanted to note we are saving a number of trees on the site. This sort of shows the trees at canopy, but the next slide will show, if you would take that away, sort of all the trees that we're saving. And from what I understand, we're saving approximately 147 existing trees are being retained. So there's a lot of trees on site, but we are saving a lot of trees. The Planning Commission's recommendation was unanimous in favor of this. I know staff mentioned that there was discussion about is this consistent with the comprehensive plan and the Wrightsville plan. The Planning Commission unanimously found that this is consistent with the objectives and the policies in both the Create Comprehensive Plan and the Wrightsville 2030 plan. What I think's even perhaps more relevant or timely, because again, that Wrightsville Avenue plan was done in 2010, and it was last updated in 2012, so it's approaching even 10 years on its update, are the more recent studies that the city has done as far as the housing needs assessment. And I won't go through all these, but City Council knows full well that there is a housing shortage in the city, and in that report, there was an estimated housing gap of over 10,000 rental units and over 13,000 for sale housing units within the county over the next 10 years. And then Councilmember Waddell mentioned this just a few minutes ago, that really what it is missing middle housing. We have a lot of single-family homes. We have a lot of apartments. We need more of both. But really, we are missing this middle housing, which the city has identified as the duplexes, the triplexes, the townhomes, and the quadruplexes. And we think that we would be serving that need of the middle housing. And the city policies are encouraging development with the missing middle housing. So we think that is very important in all this. Highlighted, all the yellow here is commercial, either services or goods. There's a lot of commercial in the area on Oleander, and really do not think we need additional commercial on this particular site. In fact, additional residences would probably help serve the existing commercial. It's also within walking distance of a full-service grocery store at Tidal Creek. So there's a lot of commercial in the area, and we think that the residential would complement that. I won't go into these in detail, but these are in the staff report, but we are close to 2 mixed-use centers, and we're also in a high-density transition area on the comprehensive plan. And that plan specifically mentions townhomes are good building types for increasing density and maintaining residential character, which is a big part of the Wrightsville Avenue plan. So in conclusion, I would say there's many benefits to this proposed rezoning. It's going to assure compatibility with the adjacent residential uses. It'll fit that missing middle housing need. It's, we think, a very well-designed development on a unique shaped property, no curb cuts on Wrightsville Avenue, and significant traffic reduction. So we really appreciate your consideration of the request. I'm glad to try to answer any questions you have, and thank you for your time.
Are there any questions of the applicant? Okay. All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Mr. Spears? Mr. Nichols?
Can you go back? It was the slide where you had the residential off. Yeah, right there.
Yes, sir.
So right here, okay, what is that? Tidal Creek is, and we know there's a huge apartment complex right there.
Yes, sir.
Does that apartment complex, does it have an exit on the backside, which is French, or does it just come out on the front, on Oleander?
I don't believe it has a vehicular access, but when I looked at that approved plan, I think I have a slide here that may show. From what we could tell here, there was a pedestrian connection. I believe council required that off of French. And I don't know if that's in yet, but from what I understand, that would provide, and we sort of estimated out like how you would get to Tidal Creek from the subject property. So I don't believe it's vehicular access, but there appeared to have been a requirement for pedestrian access.
Well, I was asking because of, I mean, the amount of vehicles and people that are in that development, and then you add to the backside this development and the traffic that's there. And I mean, I know this, I used to work over here. So I still work there, I just work from home. So I don't drive there anymore. But, you know, the traffic on Wrightsville is crazy. French is a little less used, but I was just trying to, you know, factor that into my decision of the impact to the community. And I heard what you said about the analysis, but that does, I would think that would create a significant amount of traffic in that area that they're not used to.
Yes, sir, I understand the concern. The property, this came up at the Planning Commission, the property is obviously currently vacant, so it's generating no traffic now. But under the current zoning, we think it would produce significantly more traffic than what we're proposing. And also, the residential nature of that vicinity there on Park Avenue, we just think it lends itself much better to a sort of lower to medium density townhome development than developing that commercially, and certainly not putting any additional curb cuts and traffic directly onto Wrightsville Avenue. So, but I do understand your point, and I'm not sure if I answered your question, but
Kind of so. I'm just saying, I know people will, that's a cut through right there by that church, that dirt road. You know, you cut through there, you get on Wrightsville Avenue, you go in either direction, and traffic is always zooming through there. So, just my thought.
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Well, that's always been, that French Road's been there forever. It's a whole lot more improved now than it was when I was young. And the city does, I believe, we maintain it, or we at least upgrade it from time to time, scrape it, put some marl down or what have you. The property's been sitting for a long time, and if anybody had been dying to build an office complex there or build medical offices due to its proximity to the hospital, they would have done it. This is a great plan, and I look forward to supporting it.
Thank you.
Brian, a question that Mr. Spears brought forward, and jog my memory, but when we approved the development there on Oleander, right next to Tidal Creek, I believe there was a pedestrian easement to French Road, right?
That is correct. They, I think it originally came through with potentially evaluating a road connection, but I think when it got here, you guys wanted only a pedestrian access only. So I think there's a multi-use path connection from the back of that parking lot to the French Road right away to allow folks from the north side of Park to kind of get down to the, not only this project, but the Tidal Creek.
Okay, that's what I thought.
You're sure that there's pedestrian access from the apartment complex to French Road?
It's on the plan. I have not been out there. I can't confirm whether they're completed all the construction. I know it's been taking a long time for them to get things going down there, but it's on the plan. It's part of the approved plan.
The only reason I bring that up, it was brought up to me, and I went out there to look, and I didn't see it, but it forces, if it's not been installed, it's forcing the people to go out onto Oleander Drive to get around, to get to Park Avenue, or for their bicycling, pedestrian, what have you. So I think we need to.
I will follow up with that.
Thank you very much, Brian.
Because that was a condition of the approval.
Yes, sir, it
Correct,
was.
Brian?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. Okay, thank you. Okay. All right, I will now open the public hearing and ask if anyone in the public wishes to speak on this item. There'll be a 30-minute public hearing. Each speaker will be allocated 3 minutes. So, public hearing is now open. Seeing none, are there any other comments that were received by the Madam Clerk? Okay. Any further questions from council? Okay. I'm going to close the public hearing and ask for the wishes of council, and I would also note that someone needs to make and read the consistent statement for the record. Mr. Ravenbach, since you made the motion.
I move to approve the proposed amendment to rezone the property located at 5500 Wrightsville Avenue from CB Community Business and O&I Office and Institutional to MD 17 CD High Density Multiple Dwelling Residential District, Conditional District for a 32-unit townhome development, and find it to be consistent with the relevant policies in the comprehensive plan based on the application materials and the information provided at the public hearing and in the staff report, and to find approval of the rezoning request is reasonable and in the public interest for the following reasons. The proposed rezoning would provide additional housing options and be compatible with the surrounding area.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Rumbark, second by Mr. Waddell. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That item passes unanimously on first reading. Is there a motion to waive second reading? Motion made by Councilmember Anderson, second by Councilmember Barnett. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item passes unanimously on first as well as second reading. That brings us to our next item of business, which is item PH3, which is an ordinance amending the official zoning map of the city to rezone property containing 3.32 acres of land located at 6261 and 6265 Riceville Avenue from R15 moderate density single dwelling district to R5 CD medium density mixed residential district conditional district for a 14-lot residential subdivision. And I will also note for the record that whoever makes the motion must read a consistency statement for the record. This time, I'd like to recognize our city manager, Mr. Tony Cottle. Mr. Cottle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, Mr. Walton, our associate planner, will overview this item.
Thank you. As stated, the request tonight is to rezone R5 CD for a residential subdivision. The site is located on Wrightsville Avenue near Rogers Avenue, near the Bradley Creek East and the CFPA water tower. These are photos of the subject site. There are 2 residential houses on the property. These are adjacent houses on Wrightsville Avenue, as well as properties that are adjacent on Rogers. The applicant proposes a 14-lot subdivision of single dwelling detached houses, including the construction of a 40-foot public street connecting Rogers and Wrightsville Avenues. The proposed lot sizes range from 5,800 square feet to 8,600 square feet. On March 16, 2022, the Design Adjustment Committee approved the subdivision with an adjustment concerning the curb design for the proposed public street. The Land Development Code would require connection and improvements such as paving to Rogers Avenue. Improvements would include either the installation of curb, gutter, and sidewalk, or a drainage swale and pedestrian access easement on the southern portion of Rogers Avenue along the property's frontage, which is 300 feet. Those improvements would be determined during the formal technical review process. The site is located within a neighborhood-scale infill development area of opportunity on the comprehensive plan growth strategies map. The plan promotes small lot infill development with a particular emphasis on neighborhood character. Though the lots would be smaller in size, the proposed subdivision would be consistent with the existing residential development pattern in the area. The proposed public street would also promote interconnectivity and allow for second access to Rogers Avenue. The Wrightsville Avenue 2030 plan supports maintaining single-family residential land uses, introducing a variety of densities, and preserving trees. The proposed subdivision would maintain single-family uses, complementing the surrounding existing single-family neighborhoods. I wanted to point out that the Planning Commission recommended Condition 5 in your report to limit duplex units and detached accessory dwelling units like garage apartments. The applicant is here tonight to address this condition and request that only duplex units be prohibited within this development. Staff believes the proposed conditional district rezoning is consistent with the Crate Wilmington Comprehensive Plan, the Wrightsville Avenue 2030 Plan, and we believe the request is reasonable in the public interest and recommend conditional approval subject to the conditions contained in the case summary. I'll be happy to answer any questions, and I believe that the applicant is also here to make a presentation.
Excuse me, are there any questions for the staff?
Mayor, can you go back one?
Sure.
What was, I was reading the recommended when it switched.
Sure, they wanted to make the Planning Commission wanted to make a note that detached accessory dwelling units are prohibited.
I got that part. I was looking at the applicant, so they want to hold the line on that. They agree to the duplex.
They wanted to have the ability to have a detached dwelling unit, like a garage apartment, garage below, a unit upstairs type use.
And those are still, there's a set of criteria that governs that. I mean,
Absolutely, yeah.
percentage of house, lot, I can't,
Old code.
setbacks. all
Old
kind-
code used to say that you had to have a little bit larger lot, but that's been removed. So now it's just, every residential lot can have an accessory dwelling unit. You can have a detached, but it's limited to 900 square feet. You can't go anything larger than that if it's a detached. If it's attached to the house, there's no size limit.
Thank you.
Mr. Waddell?
It's my understanding, I think it's worth noting that the new land development code with the ADUs at 900 square feet, that's not heated. That's, if it's an over-under, the garage space counts towards that. If that underneath is 450, the above is 450 as well, correct?
Yes, sir, that's very
Okay.
correct.
All right.
That's still a percentage of the primary dwelling, is that correct?
It's just capped. It's capped at 900 square feet total.
Total? Okay.
Yes. No matter how large your primary house is, the detached accessory cannot exceed 900 square feet.
Okay.
But if it's attached, it can be as big as it can be big.
Right, it's a building addition at that point.
Okay.
Makes sense.
That's what I'm saying.
This is just a point of clarification. What's the reasoning for adding the non-heated portion to the square footage requirement? So, if you have it's the whole footprint of the detached structure, not just the finished structure. What is the reasoning there?
May have to punt to Mr. Chambers, but my impression is I think previous code was confusing as to what was allowed and what was not allowed. And I think in an attempt to clarify and make it more consistent and easier to read, they just went with something that was standard. But I'll default to Mr. Chambers if I said something incorrect.
Well, I would like to clarify that the 900 feet is limiting the attached and detached. If it's an internal accessory dwelling unit, it is required to be 30% of the primary building square footage. So if they did an internal ADU, and I know this is confusing, we'll have between an internal and an actual attached, it means that it's accessible from the internal unit, basically. So you can have it attached that's accessible only from the outside and not the inside. The internal would be 30%. I don't know that we limit the, I'm looking through the regs right here. I'm not seeing where we, I think the split between the 900 with, if you have an existing garage, you would add it. But if it's, so the heated square footage of you shall not exceed 900 square feet regardless of the size of the existing building or structure.
So the heated square footage can't exceed 900?
Yes, I think you can have 900 heated square feet regardless.
Okay. So I've gotten conflicted
I'm
reports.
confusing myself.
Okay.
Here, I think.
So
Well,
that's something we can work on.
Mayor, I remember that this is a point we went round and round on, and we never got a whole lot of, there was some talk about having a place to park versus there was some conversation about the bulk of it overlooking somebody else's house. I don't.
But the intent of the code, for my understanding, the intent of the new land development code, kind of allowing more accessory dwelling units, was to increase the missing middle housing that we needed. So if you're restricting somebody has a garage and they say, you know what, I can finish off this upstairs and have a rental for somebody, but it can only be 450 square feet because that bottom part of the garage counts towards that, not just heated square footage. That seems to kind of miss the intent of, or my understanding of the intent of the code. And I don't want to derail the conversation here, but I think it is worth noting and looking forward, and because it's obviously confusing to staff, it's confusing to me, and I've had multiple folks reach out to me for some direction on it, and I'm having trouble giving them any.
Well, we will make note of that, and in the future, when we bring amendments forward, we will make sure that we provide as much clarity as possible.
Appreciate it.
This time I'm going to recognize the applicant.
Thank you. Good evening to all. I'm Cindy Wolf, and I've been working with the Lefflers on this particular project. The subject parcel, as Jeff said, is located along Wrightsville Avenue, but it also has frontage along that unimproved Rogers. We started, obviously, with the Wrightsville Avenue Corridor Plan and the Create Wilmington Comprehensive Plan as our guiding documents. And while the WACO recommended retaining the single-family uses, the Create Wilmington identifies this parcel within an area of opportunity for infill. So we believe that this proposed petition meets both of those criteria. Whoops. The zoning along this stretch is a mixture of residential uses, both single-family and multifamily, so we feel like we fit into that mix. The large lot model of the historic R15 district, back when public utilities weren't always available, was why those lots needed to be larger. More area was needed for wells and/or septic systems. But now housing style preferences are much more varied these days. Not only is the price of land expensive, but many homeowners are not interested in large yards to maintain. Our proposed 14-lot subdivision preserves the single-family character of the area. It orients the homes on lots 1, 2, 13, and 14 to address the residential streetscape of Wrightsville Avenue while also minimizing driveway conflicts with the rear access alley off the main subdivision road. It also provides the interconnectivity and public improvements to Rogers Avenue for better vehicular circulation and emergency services accessibility to what is currently a single road access to those homes all back along Rogers Avenue. The one item we would like to discuss was initially condition number 5. I believe that the city attorney has made some revisions, and it is now split into conditions 6 and 7, and we'll get into that for just a second. But I want to, during the Planning Commission, there was some discussion over nuances of attached and detached accessory dwellings. And unfortunately, my client was not there at that time. And so without giving the premise enough thought, I mistakenly agreed to limiting that provision of ADUs being internal or attached only. But after hearing, and certainly more sensible thought prevailed when we looked, and he provided this excellent exhibit, because from the very beginning, a streetscape without garages was a central focus of his vision for this neighborhood. What his intent is to put the houses up on our street, our mid-street, and then have garages, accessory dwellings. It depends on who's building, what they want as far as their home style, but still to hide them behind. And so you can see the difference here, and it definitely helps to understand if it is only permitted to be an attached accessory dwelling, you end up just with a turnaround back there, perhaps parking underneath it, whatever. But if we are permitted to have either the detached or attached, it in fact provides a nice backyard, a courtyard, a lawn area in the back of that site. So with that, I'll close with our appreciation of the staff's thorough review of the positive consistency in their policy analysis. We ask that you concur with the Planning Commission's recommendation for approval of the R5 conditional district, because we do believe that it is consistent, reasonable, and in the public interest. And I believe the way the conditions are set out, we would like to eliminate condition number 7 in your packets, which would thereby allow any homeowner in here to have, in addition to their primary home, either an internal attached or detached accessory dwelling unit. And just a little clarity, that the whole conversation about these is the maximum size of an accessory building is 900 feet. So that's why the 450 comes into play. You don't have to have a garage, but if you do have one, you're limited.
Thanks for the clarity.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So your desire is to go back to that picture where it's attached and detached.
Either.
Whoops.
That one. This.
Yes, this is an exhibit of how a house would be on the front. If you want an attached, that's just fine. If you would prefer the detached, you would have a nice little courtyard lawn area. So it's just versatility for any of the property owners that want to build in this community.
Would these attached and detached properties, would they be like, they could use them for housing or something, or whatever?
In a community like this, with the location along Riceville Avenue, near Airlie, near the beach, the price point here, I think, is more what you would find, and it's why our Land Development Code did change their rules and regulations on accessory dwellings, because they've become much more popular with current trends of adult children moving home, aging in place, your parents staying with you, and just the overall deficit of housing in our area for the future. So my guess is, no, they're not going to be rentals. Restrictive covenants of the community can control that if that's what they desire. But it does provide that missing housing. But for the most part, in a community like this, I would guess that it would be sort of family-specific.
Okay.
Mr. Anderson?
Do you want to add anything?
Cindy, help me just, the alley up front, it looks like it, you know, I just find it's odd. It goes behind 13, but not 1, just kind of.
Oh, the only reason is it goes behind 13 so that 12 had more accessibility. So the alley behind 14 and 13 is also accessible to the rear of Lot 12. That's why it went further, so the easement would go further. One, it stubs into, so whatever one wants to do is beyond the property line. But for 14, 13, we also wanted to make that accessible to Lot 12.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Waddell?
I'm going back to the ADUs.
Okay.
So if you want to hop to that slide really quickly. Did the Planning Commission give any reasoning on why they were okay with attached but not detached?
We had some opposition at the Planning Commission meeting just based on density, based on location, a couple things. But I think with the way the conversation was directed is that accessory dwellings are becoming college, extra housing, and the rental situation. And I think, like I said, it just sort of got away. There were a couple members on the Planning Commission that were adamantly against making any prohibition of that sort of thing because of the need for housing. So it was a little bit of a mixed bag, and I said, I made the mistake of saying,
we'll do
the detached only limits you to a certain extent if it's above a garage, and so therefore, sure, we'll accept that condition, but we would not prefer to.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? Okay.
Thank you
Ms.
very
Wood.
much.
Thank you. This time, I'm going to open up the public hearing and ask if anyone wishes to speak on item PH3. The public hearing will be set for 30 minutes. Each speaker will be allotted 3 minutes. Public hearing is now open.
Good evening. I have 3 minutes? Okay, so bear with me. I have.
Could you please state your name for the record and where you live, please?
Sure. I'm Catherine McFeeters, and I reside at 136 Rogers Avenue. Been there since 1990. I just was frantically scratching through my presentation, my notes, my remarks, rather, so bear with me if I flub as I'm reading, because I had to shorten it. So my property is catty-corner to the Leffler property. The Leffler property straddles Wrightsville Avenue and Rogers Avenue, and their rezoning request would connect the two roads with a new public street. Rogers Avenue is a dead-end, potholed dirt road with a 13-foot wide actual driving surface for most of its quarter-mile length. It's impossible for two vehicles driving in opposite directions to pass each other. Rogers Avenue floods when it rains, kicks up toxic road dust from vehicles driving on it when it's dry, even at 5 miles an hour, has 3-foot-deep drainage ditches on the southern side of the road, and has a precarious ingress-egress at Wrightsville Avenue. Currently, the city has no plans to improve Rogers Avenue. It's almost laughable that the only mention of improvement of Rogers Avenue in today's rezoning request is that the last 300 feet of Rogers Avenue would be improved, even though Rogers Avenue is a quarter-mile long. And we're all aware of the crazy traffic issues on Wrightsville Avenue, where the Leffler properties are located. The additional traffic burden to both Rogers Avenue and Wrightsville Avenue that would result from an extreme rezoning to R5 would make an already bad driving situation much worse. Unfortunately for us, our neighborhood has a developer's bullseye on it, thanks to the Create Wilmington Comprehensive Plan for neighborhood-scale infill development, which, according to City Planner Brian Chambers, refers to the lots that exist within existing neighborhoods that are either vacant or include smaller homes on larger lots. Infill and redevelopment of these lots should be done in a manner that is consistent and compatible with the surrounding neighborhood. Well, nothing about this rezoning request is consistent or compatible with my neighborhood. This application relies heavily on the Create Wilmington Comprehensive Plan, where only 2 of the 5 points are relevant here. The first, focus on small lot infill development, especially single-family residence. This is the only criteria that the proposal meets, single family. There's no mention of recommended zoning. The second is particular emphasis on surrounding neighborhood fabric. Most of us are familiar with the Sesame Street song. One of these things is not like the other. One of these things just doesn't belong. Compared to the existing neighborhood fabric, the size of these proposed lots are ridiculously small, and the size of the proposed houses are ridiculously large. This rezoning request clearly does not put an emphasis on surrounding neighborhood fabric. And only by attending the Planning Commission meeting did we discover they also intend to build these accessory buildings on these already tiny lots. The Wilmington Land Development Code purpose statements further define what R15 and R5 are intended for. R15 code states accommodate existing dwelling neighborhoods and moderate-sized lots. That's exactly what our neighborhood is. R5 code is designed to accommodate compact walkable neighborhoods. Walkable. Does not apply. There is nothing walkable in our neighborhood. Nothing. R5 permits a variety of residential types that is scale compatible with established surroundings. R5 is too extreme. I'll reiterate, one of these things is not like the other. R5 should allow infill units to seamlessly integrate within the predominant neighborhood fabric. Tiny lots with McMansions is not the predominant neighborhood fabric. R5 should be applied where compatible with existing urban character. This proposal does not fit in with the existing does not fit in with the existing urban character. I live there, I know. I'll finish with the Lefflers have the right to decide what to build on their property within the R15 zoning specifications. However, when their extreme rezoning change would drastically change my neighborhood fabric and impose on my quality of life, then what I say and what my neighbors say should have as much weight, if not more, than the Lefflers. No one I've talked to supports this. Please put the brakes on this rezoning requested. Tell the Lefflers and Cindy Wolf to go back to the drawing board and come back with a less offensive, more reasonable proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next.
I got a question. Yeah. Are we doing anything with Rogers Avenue? I remember we had talked about working on mud roads or mud streets.
We will have some money in next year's budget, assuming it makes it through the approval process, that will go towards improving some currently unimproved rights-of-way. I don't believe Rogers is on that list at this point in time.
Okay. Now, is Rogers, and I've not been out there, is Rogers like a dead end?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Next, anybody else?
My name is Darby Frank. I reside at the dead end on Rogers Avenue at 154 Rogers Avenue. I've been there since 2005, and I just want to speak in support of this project. As it relates to Rogers Avenue, there are many long-term neglectful situations going on with the road on Rogers Avenue. It is unimproved and it needs to be improved, especially over the last 20 years with increased owner-occupied, people living on the street, that amount of people growing. But I am in support of the project. I think it will improve, actually, the ingress and egress of Rogers Avenue and improve the overall aesthetics of the area. So I am in support of the project. Thank you.
John Lotus, I live at 144 Rogers Avenue. It literally is the one that was in the pictures across the street from this proposed development. I'll stick to bullet points because I know I have 3 minutes. There's no plan to pave Rogers. Wrightsville, when I was coming here today, the Wrightsville traffic was backed up to the proposed Leffler cottages. You just approved an apartment complex for 32 units. That's going to add to Wrightsville traffic. And the question came up during the Planning Commission, why would anyone use Rogers? The answer is a path of least resistance. People that can't get out on Wrightsville Avenue when there's traffic leaving this development are going to go down Rogers. There's a light at Rogers where Wrightsville and Airlie meet, and they're going to use that light to either turn left or right out of the proposed development. So to argue that no one will use Rogers Avenue coming out of this development is absolutely absurd. Along with the detached, now they're proposing to double the amount of houses going from 14 to 28 with their refusal to accept not having detached. Adamantly oppose this. On top of the Lefflers have not given any timeline of development. So if you're averaging one house a year, that's over a decade of construction that's occurring. And during the community meeting, Don Leffler was like, well, we may sell some lots, we may contract some houses, we may build some houses. There's zero timeline, there's zero understanding. A decade of construction in that neighborhood will diminish the quality of life for the residents. I ask that you do not support an R5, if anything, an R10. I'd prefer it stay R15. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Council. My name is Don Leffler. I live at 15 Myrtle Court, Wrightsville Beach. This property my wife and I have owned for 13 years. It's been kind of a hobby of mine. I had ideas of getting her to move off Wrightsville Beach and get somewhere with a little less traffic and a little more land. And so that's been the plan. It's been a slow plan coming about. But we wanted to live there, but we thought there was a better use for the property than us just having a single house there. Seemed like having 12 or 13 neighbors wouldn't be a bad idea at all. I want to address a couple of your specific questions about Rogers Avenue. And I want to take you back to when I first got started in this process. It really has been quite an education for me. In all the years that I sat in the backyard back there and looked at this property and conceptualized what might happen with it one day, what I might do with it, I never imagined connecting to Rogers Avenue. Never occurred to me, never was a thought. I just had an idea of a little cul-de-sac neighborhood. Cars would come in, cars would go back out to Wrightsville Avenue. As soon as I met with Ms. Wolf, she explained to me that that was going to be a non-starter, that the city would be very interested in having a second access to Rogers Avenue to kind of complete this loop. As it happens, where the property sits is very close to the end of the road. So you would have an access that's close to Oleander Drive, and then you would have an access on the other end of this road. Another key part of the geography of this particular project is that along the west side of the project, there's a drainage ditch. There's no drainage easement. There is an easement, a sewer easement with Cape Fear Public Utility Authority. but no drainage easement was ever secured. When I first purchased the property, the city was very interested in improving Rogers Avenue and making some improvements to the drainage along this area. This is 13 years ago. But the problem that we've had all along is that the drainage was what was holding the issues up, what was curtailing the project. It wasn't really the paving cost, it was actually coming up with a drainage solution. Well, we believe that we have the drainage solution with this project. We intend to put piping in along the west side of the project, and there's a connection to a neighboring project that will take the water flow out from the area. So with that done, and as was mentioned before, as part of our commitment, if the project is passed, we would pave 300 feet of Rogers Avenue. The drainage would be in place, 300 feet would already be paved. It seems like it would be a situation where the folks that have waited patiently for over 20 years since that area was annexed would finally get a paved Rogers Avenue. Eliminate some of the dust problems that you've heard about, some of the other issues. So, I hope that answers some of your questions. Oh, and I do want to give you my commitment. We are not interested in doubling the number of units by not having by having this detached unit scenario. We simply wanted to have a little more access to green space. This wasn't, the questions that came up weren't about attached units. We could always have a garage and it could be used for whatever. The question came up regarding the detached units. And again, the motivation is solely to have the possibility of some green space with a detached unit so that when you came in the driveway, you would shoot straight into your garage and not have to pull off a right-hand turn to go into a garage behind the house or attached to the house. We are glad to put in the covenants of an HOA that we would, that those units are not for rental, that they would be for family use or whatever. So, any questions? Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if you'll allow me to correct my mistake, the staff has told me already that the $250,000 allocation that is proposed in next year's budget that Councilman Barnett was asking about might make Rogers a candidate for resurfacing, but we're not certain at this point in time.
When you say resurfacing, are you talking about the city standards?
Yes.
Curb, gutter?
No, sir, not curb and gutter, just paving the street and allowing the swales to remain as the stormwater collection. Yes, sir.
The detention pond that's shown on the site, is that detention, Cindy, would you come up? The detention pond that's shown on the site, does that just capture the runoff of the 14 lots?
The detention area that we would have would, yes, absolutely be permitted for the runoff of the new street and all of the impervious surface on the 14 lots. What Mr. Leffler was talking about is off-site drainage that comes from all the way up on Allen's Lane through Westbrook past Rogers, and that would end up being an easement across the backs of lots 3, 4, 5, and 6. So it would become a public easement for off-site drainage. And part of any development like this where you have off-site drainage that traverses your property, you're sort of responsible for making sure that it easily goes in the direction that it goes now. You can't block it, you can't do anything like that. So part of the pre-TRC process that we went through, and we've already brought on an engineer that has done a preliminary basin study off the north end of this picture of how much water goes down through that ditch. Also, the engineering TRC members had said one of the things, right now the ditch goes behind the house beside lot number 1 and cuts over Wrightsville Avenue at a different place. They talked about the possibility of the city actually doing some capital improvement to bring that ditch so that it comes straight down beside 1. So there's been a lot of conversation about drainage, all of those things preliminary to us being in front of you. So we've certainly done our due diligence.
In what style would it go across Wrightsville? Would there be a culvert installed?
Oh, there is already one there.
There's already one
Yeah.
there. Okay. And obviously, this is, I know the answer, I hope, but the post-construction runoff would not exceed.
Absolutely. In this particular case, it would be the 25-year design storm, which is the permit criteria. We have an outlet, and so therefore, it's not over designed because we do have an outlet,
So
which
with
is
our-
the normal drainage pattern.
So with the grades that will be done, everything will flow away from Rogersville Road?
That's correct, absolutely. I mean, I truly believe, we obviously will agree to disagree on the direction of traffic. I see no reason for any of these 14 people to go back to Rogers to get out behind the office building at Military. But everyone has an opinion, certainly.
I don't know, I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's just, I hear the issues on Rogers Avenue, and this is an opportunity on the developer's dime to at least improve a part of it, certainly improve the public drainage system around it, and hopefully that might be the impetus to get the city to allot in their budget for the rest of it. So I think it's a step at a time, but I believe this project is a benefit to the problems. Could be.
The length of a cul-de-sac is still 880 feet or somewhere thereabouts?
It's technically 500, but there are certainly certain road systems, and we went through this a couple years ago. I know Director Harbeck was very concerned about the lack of interconnectivity when a project was approved just to the east of Bradley View that didn't have that connectivity. And that has since been zoned back, so there is no project there, and hopefully any future development would again have other accessibility to complete that neighborhood in the back.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Mr. Anderson?
Cindy, and if you don't know the answer, but I'm going to bet you do, Brian can jump in, but is there, can you give me like, on an R5, what are the setbacks?
R5 setbacks are R5 and R7, which used to be 20-foot front setbacks, have now been changed to 10. And the reason for that is because they prefer that these types of units put the parking behind. It creates a much more aesthetic streetscape. The side setbacks are 7 feet in an R5, and the rear setback is 15. So what you're seeing in the light color green, the dark color green, is basically the building envelope. Those dashed lines are the setbacks.
So there is no, so that would be the coverage. You could potentially build that.
I mean, that's a good bit of coverage. I mean, that would be a large footprint, and obviously the pond would need to be adjusted for, generally in a project like this where the lots are roughly the same size or in that range, is you would design the pond for a specific amount of impervious surface, and then in the restrictive covenants, every lot would be allotted their per capita of that.
Are there height restrictions?
The height restrictions are the same in all of our residential codes, which have gone up to 40? It's still 35
35, yeah.
in all of the residential districts.
Okay, thank you.
Spears?
Cindy, compared to the other homes in this area, are the sizes of the diagrams in this illustration, how are they in comparison to the homes around?
The surrounding area is zoned R15, the majority of it. You can see there is Jamesboro Place, there is Wrightsville Place. We've got some just only 5,000 square foot lots at the intersection of Rogersville and Wrightsville. You've got Hanover Terrace and Bradley View. Those are actually townhome communities. That's attached housing. What we've done is preserve the single family aspect, but it is sort of a mixed bag. A lot of the lots in that area are 10 and 15,000 square feet, but it just depends. Some of them are older lots. They might be what they would call non-conforming, but it is an R15 district, so conforming would be a minimum of 80 feet wide and 15,000 square feet. All of our lots are a minimum of about 60 to 65 foot wide and roughly 125. So even though we're requesting an R5, most of these lots are in the 6,000 to 7,000 square foot range. So yes, they are smaller than other lots, and that is the trend.
I'm not talking about that lot, I'm talking about the size of the actual home.
Oh,
homes-
well, I mean, the homes haven't been designed yet.
Oh, well, I mean, but you have, like, if the dotted line is what the home is supposed to be.
No. The dotted
no?
line is the available envelope for the home. So I guess a good example would be here, even though that's the envelope for the home, they're not using every single square of it.
I got you.
There would be lawn area, there would be foundation plantings.
I mean, but you probably would have been a little more convincing if you didn't leave this up to our imagination. I mean, I'm just the only one to be vocal about it. I mean, from what we normally see when you bring us an illustration with the dotted lines or whatever, and then there's a lot, we would think that I know, I'll speak for me. I thought that was the size of the dwelling.
It's generally on my side of the days, a difference in the type of rezonings. This particular rezoning was for a single-family subdivision. So we're not hamstrung to a specific look of a building or look of the house, because compared to a triplex or a quadruplex where it is attached, you do want to see what the effect might be on surrounding neighborhoods. This is a single-family development, just like the single-family lots around it. These lots are just a bit smaller.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Barnett?
Hi, Cindy. One of the things at the leadership training we had this week, they talked about the trend for housing is that one of the major trends is single housing, that people are looking for like a single house like this complex here. I heard the concern, though, that some people may be thinking that you're going to take the additional piece and make it, I'm not going to say it could be a place for grandmama to stay or a cousin to stay, but it won't be a place where you're going to like rent it.
That's what Mr. Leffler said. It's
Okay.
its intention to restrict it so that accessory dwellings, if you want. If I want to buy Lot 5, I may not want an accessory dwelling. I may want a larger house. I may want a smaller house. There will be restrictive covenants that will probably dictate some of the aesthetics, some of the architectural controls. They can dictate that, yes, you can have accessory dwellings in your community, but you're not allowed to rent them. Those are totally up to the owners association that would be required, because they have a pond for responsibility, they have open space and common areas for responsibility.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I'm good.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Any additional questions from council? All right. Madam Clerk, have you received any additional comments?
No, sir. No, sir.
I will now close the public hearing and ask for the wishes of council, and also note that whoever makes the motion, which is Mr. Barnett, who has been seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Haynes, read the
Mr. Mayor.
consistency statement for the record, please.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
can I just make a comment?
Sure.
I feel like as council, we're in a pickle when these developments come to us, because on one side, we often hear about Wilmington being overdeveloped, and then we have the issue of affordable housing and, mid-housing or whatever they called it earlier. And we talk about these comprehensive plans and, what an area should look like, and then what we decide or what we pass as a council, and it doesn't necessarily look like that. And I'll be the one to admit for myself, it seems like oftentimes we're talking out of both sides of our mouths, because we say one thing, or we have, these plans laid out for what we want in our community, and then we do something different. And I don't know how we could be more consistent with what we pass, what we bring to someone's community, what we even bring to our own community. We understand there's a need, but is no way we can fix the housing issue and fix the overdevelopment issue at the same time. It's no way. And I just wanted to say that because it's tough. It's really tough for us to do. It's a tough decision to make. And again, I'm speaking for myself. Sometimes it's a tough decision for me to make, and I like to try to base my decision on the people from the community. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Well, and to Kevin's point, and this has always been interesting, is that the Housing Coalition had indicated that we need 10,000 homes. And you look out there and you look at all the available property that's out there, and you got people on one side saying we don't need any more housing, period. And then we have others that are saying we need more housing, affordable housing. I think the garage apartments and the accessory structures was a way for us to allow the private sector, especially private individuals, to be able to build some of that middle housing that we're losing. But also understanding the complexity of the comprehensive plan that was put together that took several years to do, the travel patterns, the living patterns of the community have changed since the 1980s. And when a lot of developers were developing in the 60s and 70s and 80s, when there wasn't countywide or even sewer for the city, a lot of it was based on septic tanks and wells which had to be 100 feet from each other. So the lots were literally a half acre in size, most of them. The lots were much bigger, and today we're seeing lots that are much smaller because the needs are not as great for larger lots. So it is a balancing act, Kevin, to your point. And, you know, we're going to be seeing a lot of infill development in the coming years because most of the city has been built out. And so it is, you know, a compromise. We have to dig deep down into how we do land use patterns. We have to leave it up to the professionals to really determine what's the best plans for us, taking into consideration what the citizens have asked for, which is more walkability, more services close to each other. And one of the things that Glenn Harback and others have talked about for many years is connectivity, which is probably the toughest thing to do, is connecting neighborhood to neighborhood, Rogers Avenue to Wrightsville Avenue. And I understand. I mean, we see it on Greenville Loop Road, where you have all these subdivisions that are pouring out onto Greenville Loop Road with very little access to Oleander Drive, which has created a significant traffic issue for there because a lot of those neighborhoods did not want the connectivity, and the politicos at that point in time made the decision not to connect. And now we're dealing with that significant issue. So connectivity is a big one. And then the other one is, and Tony, we talked about this, was the fact that I think we have about 4 miles of unpaved road left in the city of Wilmington. A lot of it has to do in the 95 and 98 annexation areas. And a lot of those roads need to be improved, and we need to start taking steps, significant steps, to make the investment to finish this last 4 miles of roads in our community. I know it involves a lot of input, and we have to take care of stormwater today where we didn't have to take care of it maybe prior to 1990. But that's something that we need to start focusing on because I do think that we'll see a lot more infill development on every nook and cranny of lots that are available. But to your point, Kevin, it is a complicated and it's a balancing act. And I think in this particular case, going with single family with a detached or accessory structure is the right call based on what the Planning Commission and the Planning Department has shared with us. But everybody's entitled to how they feel, and I hear yours. Mr. Waddell?
Yeah, I just have a point of clarification about the motion that's on the floor. Is this motion to approve it with condition number 7 included, or does this motion to approve remove condition number 7 that prohibits the detached accessory dwelling? Are we moving?
I would have to ask Mr. Barnett, who has made the motion.
Removing number 7.
Removing 7.
Yeah.
And Mayor Pro Tem accepts the friendly amendment. Now to Mr. Rivenbar.
Just following up on what the mayor and Kevin said, prior to the mid-50s, we didn't have a zoning ordinance. And our county fathers and the city fathers, all that land out there, they just zoned it R20. And a lot of roads that were country lanes in those days they've become collector streets, major thoroughfares, and it looks like we're rezoning everything in sight, but we're rezoning it to the districts that it needs to be. Because, for example, Winter Park was called Winter Park Gardens. Those lots were acreage because they want to encourage people to have gardens and plenty of room and stuff. And now you can take a typical lot along Audubon Boulevard or whatever, and we'd be faced with similar to stuff that Mr. Leffler has, way big. We were placing 2 R15 houses on his property with 14 single-family residences. I think it's a smart move. I think it's good for us to hit that 10,000 mark we're trying to hit.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to clarify that we are keeping with the comprehensive plan, and that this particular project shows strong or modest support all down the line where it is compared item by item to the comprehensive plan. And there were actually no non-support items. So what the public very much participated in, I think we had 18 public meetings, and people could go to any of them. This is what the public designed, and so this project is in keeping with that and what we have previously said, that we as a council and as a city at the direction in which we want to move. So I just want to make it clear to the public that we are keeping with what has been approved in the past and what the citizens themselves designed and supported.
Well, and I say that because in the previous public hearing, staff recommended that we didn't approve, and we approved it. So if we're listening to the professionals and we're sticking to the plan.
And to that point, and I think that was something that we talked about yesterday in respect to the one prior to the one that Kevin just mentioned, the staff's concerns and comments were based on the fact that y'all wanted commercial development within the development itself, correct, Brian?
Yes, that is true, Mr. Mayor.
And so one of the things that we talked about yesterday, and hopefully we can evaluate that portion of the comprehensive plan, is allowing an option based on living conditions, based on what retail is. I think the big concern that a lot of people have, especially that in the commercial side of things, is a lot of people today are shopping online. People are not going to stores as much. They're doing it more online. And to require that to be part of a development, although it does tie into the plan, which is what we're trying to do, is more of a neighborhood type commerce, is something that I think we ought to take a look at in respect to option, because if things do switch back where more people do want to go to stores that have little enclaves, that a person that is developing the property could then convert it to a commercial type setting as opposed to just leaving it residential. But I think it would behoove us to at least be able to look at the option, but with certain criteria. And I hope y'all would take a look at that, because I think that's the big concern, is how much retail is out there, how much do we really need? More people shopping online, more people staying home. So.
Yeah, we agree with that, and I think flex space should be something that we look into a little bit deeper and see what opportunities exist to incorporate in that into the code.
And one of the things that I mentioned about the workshop I attended, they talked about making sure that someone on our staff is aware of the trends, looking at what's happening across the country. And for example, one of the things that they said that just hit me right in my face was they talked about how now single people want to buy houses. Before they didn't want to buy houses. Now they want to buy. Single kids want to buy homes, and that's why we're running into the number of lack of proper housing. But now I will read the consistent statement. May I? I move to approve the proposed amendment to rezone the property located at 6261 and 6265 Wrightsville Avenue from R15 moderate-density, single-dwelling district to R15 CD, medium-density, mixed residential district, conditional district, for a 14-lot residential subdivision and find it to be consistent with the relevant policies in the comprehensive plan. Based on the application materials and the information provided at the public hearing and in the staff report, and to find approval of the rezoning request is reasonable and in the public interest for the following reasons. The proposed rezoning would be consistent with surrounding uses and compatible with the surrounding neighborhood.
All right. Okay. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That item passes unanimously on first reading. Is there a motion to waive second reading? Motion made by Councilmember Waddell, second by Councilmember Barnett. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye. That item passes unanimously on first as well as second reading. That brings us to our next item of business, which is item PH4, which is an ordinance amending the official zoning map of the city to rezone property containing 1.01 acres of land located at 5737 Market Street from RB Regional Business to CSCD Commercial Services Conditional District to allow a 3-story indoor self-storage facility. At this time, I'd like to recognize our city manager, Mr. Caudle, and I will also note that whoever makes the motion must read a consistency statement for the record. Mr. Caudle?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What I suppose Mr. Walton will hope is his last appearance of the evening. He'll also overview this item for us.
Welcome back, Bear.
We won't be talking about residential for this one. As explained, the applicant is looking to rezone this to CS Conditional District for a 95,700 3-story indoor self-storage facility. This is the general area on Market Street near the Toyota and Parkway dealerships on Market Street. These are pictures of the subject site. The existing outdoor advertising sign will remain as part of this project. Some adjacent photos, as pretty typical on Market Street. The applicant proposes to subdivide the property into 2 lots and provide a 40-foot wide private access utility public drainage easement for access to the rear vacant tract to the north, which is in the county's jurisdiction. One pedestrian connection is proposed from Market Street to the building. Upon a recommendation by staff, the applicant elected to remove 3 parking spaces in front of the proposed building to allow more streetscape improvements along Market. A NCDOT widening project is proposed along the subject site and is in the design phase. Along the frontage, a raised concrete median is proposed, eliminating all left turns in and out of the project. Construction is expected to start in 2029. The site is identified as within a live-work innovation zone area of opportunity and along a major corridor regional parkway of Market Street. The comprehensive plan supports redevelopment of existing underutilized properties. The proposed rezoning is consistent with the Create Wilmington Comprehensive Plan, and staff believes the proposal is reasonable and in the public interest, and we recommend conditional approval, including the conditions contained in the case summary. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions from staff? Okay. Yes, sir.
I'm sure nobody brought up the subject of traffic, because this really reduces trips compared to what would be allowed by right in RB.
Absolutely. It's noted in our staff report that this is a significant reduction compared to a retail sales establishment in this location.
Thank you. All right. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. This time, I recognize the applicant. Cindy, you've been with us all night tonight.
I enjoy your company. Cindy Wolf, and I'm here on behalf of the owner and the developers of this project. As Jeff pointed out, self-storage facility for 3 stories of climate-controlled interior space. It just seems to be a fact these days that people have more stuff. It's just amazing. But the storage industry is booming, and their marketing standards suggest that most folks desire to have their treasures in facilities within a 3-mile range of their homes. And you can see, as we all know, this stretch of Market Street, that location fits for a multitude of homes in the area. This exhibit shows the site layout and the general architectural style of the building. The updated Land Development Code now has much more specific conditions for storage facilities and for our streetscapes, our frontages. So those details will be worked out during the detailed design and permitting through TRC. But in summary, we appreciate the staff and Planning Commission's recommendation, and we believe this is consistent in the public interest because the use is an extremely low traffic generator. The design does take into consideration future DOT widening and median project, even though it's several years down the line. Shared access for the two parcels by a single driveway intersection reduces traffic conflicts and improves vehicular safety. And sensible development of services where they're most needed fosters sustainable growth and land efficiency. The developer accepts the conditions of approval that the staff has provided, with the knowledge that they'll not only protect the surrounding properties, but also enhance this project and its value and aesthetics. So we seek your approval and would be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for the applicant, for Cindy?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, now I'm going to open up the public hearing and ask if anybody in the public wishes to speak on item PH4. Seeing none, are there any further comments? Madam Clerk? Okay. Are there any other questions from council? If not, I'm going to close the public hearing, ask for the wishes of council, which I see that we have a motion by Councilmember Anderson, second by Councilmember Barnett. Mr. Anderson, will you please read the consistency statement for the record, please, sir?
I move to approve the proposed amendment to rezone the property located at 5737 Market Street from RB Regional Business to CSCD Commercial Services Conditional District for a 3-story indoor self-storage facility and find it to be consistent with the relevant policies in the comprehensive plan based on the application materials and the information provided at the public hearing and in the staff report, and to find approval of the rezoning request as reasonable and in the public interest for the following reasons. Proposed rezoning would be compatible with the existing development pattern found along the segment of Market Street, this segment of the Market Street corridor.
Okay. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Item passes unanimously on first reading. Is there a motion to waive second reading? Motion made by Councilmember Rivenbark, second by Councilmember Barnett. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item passes unanimously on first as well as second reading. That brings us to our next item of business, which is item PH5, which is an ordinance amending the official zoning map of the city to rezone property containing 1.56 acres of land located at 6756 Market Street from CSCD Commercial Services Conditional District to RB Regional Business District. At this time, I'd like to recognize our city manager, Mr. Cottle. Mr. Cottle.
Mr. Mayor, Brian Chambers, our senior planner, will review this item for us.
Good evening again. This site is located on the south side of Market between Old Dairy and Station Roads. The request is to rezone the rear portion of this site, which is approximately 1.5 acres of a 3-acre tract, and it contains an existing hardware store, which is Stevens Ace. Here's the site within the proximity of the surrounding area. Several photos of the subject property. The site is surrounded by commercial uses on the north, east, and west, and there are single dwelling uses located to the south across an unimproved right-of-way. July of last year, City Council approved the conditional district for this site to be used for mini warehousing in the rear of the site. That project has not been constructed, and the applicant wishes to revert to the previous zoning due to the construction cost and the review time has been associated with that project. So the applicant is proposing to rezone the rear portion to the RB district. The comprehensive plan identifies this site within a high-density transition area of opportunity. And it's also located on a major corridor. The plan encourages quality site planning so that infill development is compatible. The proposed rezoning would allow for the site to revert to its previous classification, bringing the site under a common zoning designation. The rezoning is limited to the rear of the site, so the commercial property would have minimal impact on adjacent uses. Staff believes this proposal is consistent with our comprehensive plan and is reasonable in the public interest and is recommending conditional approval. Not conditional approval, it's just approval because there are no conditions. Planning Commission at their April meeting voted unanimously to recommend approval of this. I'll be happy to answer any questions, and I'm not.
Are there any questions for staff?
The applicant is available for questions as well, but I do not believe they have a presentation. Sorry.
Okay. Any questions? Any questions for the applicant? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
At this point, I will open the public hearing and ask if there is anyone in the public that would like to speak on this, either pro or con. Please come forward. If anyone is interested in speaking on this item, please come forward. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and ask for the wishes of council. We have a motion by Mr. Spears and a second by Mr. Waddell. Mr. Spears, will you read the statement?
I move to approve the proposed amendment to rezone the property located at 6756 Market Street from CSCD Commercial Services Conditional District to RB Regional Business District and find it to be consistent with the relevant policies in the comprehensive plan based on the application materials and the information provided at the public hearing and in the staff report, and to find approval of the rezoning request is reasonable and in the public interest for the following reasons. The proposed rezoning would be consistent with the surrounding area and would bring the site under a common zoning designation.
All right, all of those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? And that passes unanimously. Is there a motion to waive second reading? We have a motion by Mr. Anderson, a second by Mr. Barnett. All of those in favor of that signify by saying aye. Any opposed? That also passes unanimously. Okay, that was 5. Now we're going to 6. All right, the next item is public hearing. 6, PH 6, it's an ordinance amending the official zoning map of the city to rezone property containing 1.23 acres of land located at 109 and 111 Giles Avenue from R10 residential to R5 CD residential conditional district for 2 residential lots containing quadruplex structures. At this time, I'll recognize our city manager, Mr. Caudle.
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. Associate Planner Patrick O'Mahony will review this item for us.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and members of council. As mentioned, the request tonight is to rezone conditionally from R10 to R5 CD conditional district. The site is located on the east side of Giles Avenue and contains approximately 1.23 acres and is currently vacant. This map shows the general vicinity surrounding the request. These are photos of the subject property and adjacent properties. And these are photos of adjacent land uses. As mentioned, the site's currently zoned R10 residential. It's bordered by R10 residential zoning to the north and south, with CB community business to the west and O&I CD zoning to the east. There are residential uses located north and south, with commercial uses to the east and west. The subject parcels were originally rezoned as part of a conditional district rezoning from R15 residential to MFL CD multifamily zoning. This is for a 28-unit residential development that was proposed over 3.57 acres total. This is a portion of that project. This was actually never constructed and rezoned to R10 as part of the Land Development Code update on December 1st, 2021. This is the proposed site plan. As mentioned, the proposal is to rezone to R5 CD conditional district for 2 lots. Each lot will contain a quadruplex structure. The units are proposed to be 2-story and served by a shared driveway. Under the current R10 zoning, there is a development potential of 5 residential units. These are elevations provided by the applicant. The site's located within a greenfield site as multi-use place area of opportunity and is near a mixed-use place, mixed-use center as identified on the Comprehensive Plan's Growth Strategies map. This designation promotes a variety of building types with diverse housing options that are accessible to individuals and families of all incomes, needs, and preferences. The site's also located within the plan boundary of the Seagate Neighborhood Plan. This plan supports low-density multifamily uses at this location, as well as commercial and office uses as well. The comprehensive plan supports new residential development and additional densities in a manner that is consistent with the surrounding neighborhood and where services are nearby. The proposed rezoning would allow for compatible infill near the commercial corridor of Oleander Drive. Staff believes this proposed zoning amendment is consistent with the Create Wilmington Comprehensive Plan, the Seagate Neighborhood Plan, and the request is reasonable and in the public interest. Staff recommends conditional approval with the conditions outlined in the case summary. Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval at their April meeting. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions. The applicant's here as well.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff? Seeing none, thank you. This time I'll recognize the applicant.
Thank you. One last time. I'm Cindy Wolf, and I'm here on behalf of the owners. The Seagate area certainly has been transitioning with redevelopment of antiquated structures and infill of vacant lots. And I'm thrilled to say that the Seagate neighborhood has been very positive in their support of this particular project. I believe you did receive one letter from one of the very active members of the community, and I know there was a woman here at the Planning Commission. We had an excellent meeting with the neighborhood prior to the submittal way back when. So with this, the subject tract certainly is an attractive location for residential use. Its proximity to the River of the Sea Bike Trail. There's planned multi-use pathways now on Greenville Avenue, hopefully in the near future. And there's lots of service establishments that have or will be developed along Oleander and in this area. It's obvious that the area has undergone a lot of zoning changes. You can see all the CDs on the different zoning designations here. And we believe that zoning this property to R5 for a slightly higher density of residential development would certainly be consistent with the concept of transitioning uses from the commercial corridor along Oleander Drive back to the more quiet Park Avenue residential streetscape. Townhome communities like this are in demand, I think, due to lifestyle preferences, affordability factors, and proximity to services. Although the petition is technically to rezone 2 existing lots from R10 to R5, which would allow each to construct a triplex, what we've done is a composite neighborhood of 8 attached single-family dwellings, more often defined as townhomes. And the footprints that we've provided are large enough to have 2-car garages, potentially the master bedroom downstairs, which we think would be an excellent attractive feature for the more aged demographic. All the homes are 2-story, and yet they are feasible loft space in the architectural style underneath the roof structure. The quads would have a common driveway from Greenville Avenue, or Giles Avenue. The Owners Association would be created for responsibility of upkeep and sustainability of the common areas. Landscaping, of course, always includes vegetation in the buffer yards because these would be attached homes compared to the single-family homes on 2 of the sides, and street trees along Giles Avenue and the access drive. This exhibit is the general architectural style intended, and along with the Giles Avenue facade, which is all now required for any triplexes or quadruplexes. They can't just have the side of the building facing the street. We have provided a porch on that facade of the building that faces Giles on both of the units. The unit fronts along the front, material variations and color schemes certainly add interest to the overall aesthetics of a community like this. Oops. This is another instance where the consistency factors are just glowing for this proposed petition. We appreciate the staff and Planning Commission's positive support, and like I said, this one in Seagate, I had positive support from Seagate also. And so we hope that the City Council deems this an approved rezoning based upon its consistency and its importance to the public good. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wolf. Are there any questions for the applicant?
I just wanted to make a comment. What was that comment about aged? What was that, age?
And a more aged demographic often likes the master bedroom to be on the bottom floor. A lot of the townhomes and quadruplexes I work on are generally.
I just hadn't heard it put quite like that. It's a nice way of putting it.
Does Charlie qualify?
And that actually was, in that workshop, that was part of the trend. That there are
Age
actually
demographic.
more seniors, want their private place.
Yeah, we live in longer.
Yeah, and we don't want to go up and down the stairs. You're right.
Are there any serious questions for the applicant?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, appreciate it. At this time, I'll open the public hearing and ask if there's anyone in the public that'd like to come forward and speak either in support of or opposition to this proposal. Is there anyone in the public that would like to speak? I'll ask the city clerk if she has received anything. No, she has not. So at this time, I will close the public hearing and ask for the wishes of council. We have a motion by Mr. Barnett and a second by Mr. Anderson.
I move to approve the proposed amendment to rezone the property located at 109 and 111 Giles Avenue from R10 residential to R5 CD residential conditional district for 2 lots containing 2 quadruplex residential structures and finding to be consistent with the relevant policies in the comprehensive plan. Based on the application material and the information provided at the public hearing and in the staff report, and to find approval of the rezoning request is reasonable and in the public interest for the following reasons. The proposed rezoning would allow for additional density and lot sizes in a manner that is consistent with the surrounding neighborhood.
Thank you, Mr. Barnett. We have a proper motion and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Is there a motion to waive second reading? I have a motion by Mr. Rivenbark and a second by Mr. Anderson. All in favor of that signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That also passes unanimously.
That brings us to our next item of business, which is our ordinances. And we have 01 is an ordinance to deobligate the diesel emissions reductions grant contract appropriation amount of $637,970. At this time, I'd like to recognize our city manager, Mr. Caudle. And I'll also note that this was continued. I'm sorry, go ahead. I made a mistake. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
Trash and Recycling Superintendent Rick Porter will overview this item for us.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Before you is an ordinance to deobligate the diesel emissions reduction grant awarded back in February of '21. It was to purchase an all-electric trash vehicle. Unfortunately, Lion Electric, the manufacturer, had significant impacts from the pandemic as well as economic situations and was unable to meet the grant deadline. So we're requesting that we be able to return the funds in the amount of $270,586 to DEQ so that they can use that money for a different appropriate project.
Okay, very good. Are there any questions of staff? Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
What are the wishes of council in respect to the ordinance? We have a motion to approve by Councilmember Waddell, second by Councilmember Spears. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That item passes unanimously on first reading. Is there a motion to waive second reading? Motion made by Councilmember Waddell, second by Councilmember Anderson. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item passes unanimously on first as well as second reading. That brings us to item 02, which is an ordinance appropriating $511,484 for a refund of short-term lodging registrations collected since program's inception and accrued interest. This time I'd like to recognize our city manager, Mr. Caudle. Mr. Caudle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Assistant City Attorney Sean Evans will overview this item for us.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and members of council. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you again this evening and present this PowerPoint presentation to you again. Also, thank Jennifer Mulready. This is really her item, but she allowed me to provide the legal update, which will be, I think, most of the presentation, but she's here to answer any specific questions about the ordinance that accompanies this. This presentation is being made at the request of City Council to update the public about the recent decision in the Schroeder case that was recently released by the North Carolina Court of Appeals. In brief summary, this case started after it went through the city process in Superior Court in New Hanover County. The Superior Court judge in that decision held that Wilmington's entire ordinance was invalid and also denied the constitutional claims raised by the Schroeders. Both parties appealed to the Court of Appeals. It's been at the Court of Appeals for a period of time, and that decision has recently come out. Mr. Mayor, you brought up a good point yesterday regarding the split decision. I just added that parenthetical following that to indicate that the decision by the court was unanimous. The three judge panel that did consider this all voted for the same opinion. And just in brief description, what's meant by the note there for split decision is that part of the ordinance of Wilmington has been upheld, part has been voided, and I'll go into that in more specifics on the next slides. What's been upheld? The key items are noted on this slide. Our ordinance bans these uses in one district currently. That's the mobile home park district. That was upheld by the court. The court upheld the parking requirements, which are based on the number of bedrooms that are in these units. That was upheld by the court. Requiring insurance also upheld. Ground floor restrictions in certain areas was upheld. The requirement to have a local manager and that manager be identified and posted inside the units has been upheld. And then all of the nuisance-related requirements that were in the ordinance have also been upheld about parties, issues with trash, and required postings to have the non-emergency police contact number and also the local manager posted in there so that folks who are staying at these units know who to contact and if something comes up. What's now void? The Court of Appeals determined that Wilmington's registration requirement was void. The related postings inside, which would have been the paperwork submitted by the city indicating that they are properly registered, is also void. In addition, the court voided the 400-foot separation requirement between uses and the 2% cap on uses. I'll note briefly that third bullet point. The requirement for off-site parking is valid. However, the way our ordinance is worded, before you could register, you had to submit documentation, and the court said that's not allowed. So it's really the paperwork that's associated with that the court struck down. So what happens next? The city has published guidance documents. We will continue to do so. We're fielding calls, answering questions for folks who have been registered and are calling in with questions. We're taking steps to amend the code, the land development code, for the sections that apply to this. This will go before Planning Commission at their June meeting and then most likely come before City Council at your July meeting this summer. And per requirements of North Carolina general statutes, we will refund the registration fees, and the subsection of 160D is listed there below. The refund process will begin immediately. Staff is already working on this. It's the intention of staff right now, the schedule has been made that these checks will be finalized and completed by the end of June. Checks will be mailed to the registered parties, and the refunds will include all registration fees paid, all convenience fees paid, and that includes charges that were added on for credit card and both bank debit card. And then the statute requires 6% interest to be paid as well. All those numbers are included in the ordinance that is before council this evening. One question was asked yesterday morning, and I'll address it briefly, about fines that have been assessed. The city did look into that. Catherine Thurston and her team compiled that information. If I misstate it, y'all let me know, but approximately $9,300 in fines have been collected. Jennifer Moretti and her team have looked at that, and it'll be addressed to the general budget. Those will be refunded. There are other fees that were assessed but not yet collected, and those will not be collected at this point. So I hope that answers that question. If there are any others, I'll be happy to address them as best I can. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Waddell?
Yeah, it's not really a question. It's more of just a statement on the, I just want to say I think the world's changed quite a bit since 2019 when this initial decision was made, and I think the information that we have now on short-term rentals, along with the public perception and the public comfort overall and general outlook on short-term rentals has changed along with the market and what the market is looking for. I think it's the government's responsibility overall, in my opinion, to be a conduit for the free market rather than any sort of impediment to it. And that private property rights should be a cornerstone of government decision-making. I do want to commend the previous councils and the staff that was involved for the fiscal responsibility and restraint they showed and the foresight and demonstrated holding registration fees back and the interest aside until that final decision was made. And I, along with, I would assume the rest of the council, look forward to returning the affected citizens their money in a swift fashion and commend the staff again for kind of getting that information out quickly. And look forward to moving the city of Wilmington continually into the future and increasing the protection of private property rights as we do so.
Okay, what are the wishes of council in respect to the item? We have a motion approved by Councilmember Spears, second by Councilmember Anderson. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That item passes unanimously on first reading. Is there a motion to waive second reading? Motion made by Councilmember Rivenbark, second by Councilmember Anderson. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That item passes unanimously on first as well as second reading. Next item of business is our resolutions. Item R1 is a resolution certifying sufficiency of the annexation petition for property located at 205, 209, 213, and 217 Middle Sound Loop Road. And this time I'd like to recognize our city manager, Mr. Tony Caudle. Mr. Caudle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just trying to make a liar out of me. Jeff Walton will present this item for you this evening. I will note for you that we were sent a revised R1 earlier today, and just wanted to make sure this would be the item you would be voting on.
Okay, very good. Thank you. You're the cleanup batter tonight, Mayor.
So these are resolutions, one to certify that the annexation petition is accepted and to establish the public hearing. Just an overview, this is a property off Middle Sound Loop Road. We will be making a formal application next month for the annexation public hearing. This is a general area of where the property is located in the Ogden area near the Publix, Middle Sound, Lindire, that sort of area. And this is how far it is from the corporate limits. The applicant is proposing to do a 72-unit affordable senior housing development. It has gone through county commissioners and has been approved for the rezoning through them, as well as they've been through the permitting side. So it is a shovel-ready approved county project already. They could start construction tomorrow if they would like to. The purpose of next month's meeting is to discuss an annexation, voluntary annexation petition.
Very good. Any questions for Bear? Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yes.
What are the wishes of council in respect to the resolution? We have a motion approved by Councilmember Barnett, seconded by Councilmember Waddell. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Now let's go to item R2, which is a resolution establishing a public hearing for annexation of property located at 205, 209, 213, and 217 Middle Sound Loop Road. At this time, I'd like to recognize the city manager, Mr. Caudle. Mr. Caudle.
Mr. Mayor, this is just a companion item that actually sets the public hearing date for that property, just for your consideration.
Okay, very good. All right. We have a motion to approve by Councilmember Waddell, second by Councilmember Barnett. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item passes unanimously. This concludes the regular agenda. Are there any items to be brought forward by our city attorney or acting city attorney?
I meant to say it earlier, so John Joy sends his apologies. He did test positive for COVID last week. He's feeling much better, feeling fine, actually planning to return to work later this week, so you won't have to put up with me much longer.
That's not bad, Sean. You did a good job. Mr. Caudle?
Any reason for him to get out of work, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
Last week, we hosted the North Carolina League of Municipalities annual conference for the first time in 3 years. I think it's safe to say that it was a resounding success. Most of the council members showed up for that meeting, and we appreciate your attendance at that meeting. I would like to also thank most specifically the employees who gave of their time to be able to pull off a really important event. I think most of them realized how important it was once they got there, and we got nothing but rave reviews from the folks thus far. So I want to say thank you to all the employees who participated. I also want to say a special thanks to Tom Bowden, and most especially our own clerk, Ms. Penelope Spicer Sidbury, for making sure that it all came off without a hitch. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, you're not going to take a bow on that one? You did a heck of a job. Mr. Waddell?
Nothing, thank you.
Barnett?
Sure. Just a couple things. One is May is Mental Health Awareness Month. So it's a good opportunity for us to kind of check into ourselves, but also check into your favorite friends. The second thing is we're right in the middle of an election. And so we want people to remember to vote. Make sure that you go out and vote for the primary. And then the third thing, I too want to commend the staff for the work that they did last week, especially Penny and the rest of the staff for hosting the event. It was tremendous. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Rampart?
Don't forget Sunday is Mother's Day. Don't dare forget that.
Okay. Mr. Anderson? Mr. Spears?
Yes, sir. One thing, well, two things. I do want to congratulate the city and staff on a job well done for hosting the North Carolina League of Municipalities. And I also want to say happy birthday to my baby girl, turned a big 4 today. Happy birthday, Elise. Daddy loves you.
Happy birthday. Before we finish, two things. We had a tremendous turnout for the honor flight last Friday, and it was spectacular. I think there was 85 veterans from World War II to the Korean conflict to Vietnam that went, and it was very well attended. And we had veterans, I believe there were 4 of them from World War II, I think from 97 to 100 years of age. And I appreciate all of the support that this community showed our veterans and all of the chaperones that went with them to Washington. And it was a tremendous turnout early in the morning when they left, and of course in the evening when they came back. So I just want to say to the Honor Flight Committee, congratulations for a job well done. And it's one of those events that is nonpartisan, and everybody loves your veterans, and it's great to see people come together to support and honor them for their duty and service to our country. And last, to Tony's point, you know, the League of Municipalities have been in existence for over 100 years, and this is the first time that event was ever held here in Wilmington, North Carolina. I want to thank the Convention Center and Mrs. Brady for the outstanding job that she did in putting it together, but more importantly to the city staff, Tony, to all of the folks. I think I saw every one of the folks in this room that participated, and they wore purple shirts so everybody could identify who they were. It was outstanding, and I had nothing but congratulations and kudos to the city staff for the outstanding event that we put on. In fact, it was so outstanding that they want to come back here every damn year. I shouldn't say that way, but it's us in Asheville that they really love, but it was outstanding. I don't think some of these folks hadn't been to Wilmington in quite some time, and they were really surprised by the amount of work that we have done down here. So Penny, congratulations, and Tony and to Tom and everybody that was there. I'm going to miss somebody, so I'm just going to say y'all did a tremendous job. So with that, the most fascinating thing I just want to mention real quick was the magician that ended up getting in a box. And Mr. Barnett and 4 other elected leaders locked him into the box, and they had a woman stand on top of the box. And somehow the magician got out of the box. How he get it? And Mr. Barnett, you were standing right there.
I was right there in front of the box. I keep telling people about this. And the sad part was the girl pulled up the black curtain, and he said, count, 1, 2, 3, and he dropped it. And then she came out of the box, and he was standing on top. And the other thing is, you didn't hear a sound. Like, you know, I didn't hear any rattling or anything like that, and it was really locked. So it's magic. I don't know.
What can we say? Thank you for taking interest in your government. We stand adjourned.